Hello and welcome to the Megacast by Actual Tech Media. Today's topic, data protection, disaster recovery as a service, and disaster recovery. Thank you so much for joining us. We've got an awesome Megacast lined up for you today. On this event, you'll hear from experts at Faction, Rubrik, Pure Storage, Veeam, Clumio, Druva, and HubStore, some of the most innovative data protection and disaster recovery solutions on the market today. And we've got them all here in one fast-paced, fun-filled event. You'll get to see these solutions in action, learn what makes them unique, and get all your questions answered. My name is David Davis of Actual Tech Media, and I'll be serving as your moderator for today's Megacast. We at Actual Tech Media created the Megacast, EcoCast, and Summit event series to help educate IT professionals such as yourselves about the latest and greatest in enterprise technology. We at Actual Tech Media are all IT professionals ourselves, CIOs, managers, and administrators, and so we know what it's like in IT. If you have data protection and disaster recovery challenges, you're in the right place to find the best solutions available today. Now, before we get started, just a few things that you should know. This is a Megacast, and we've got some mega prizes, as I like to say. I'll talk about those as well as the requirements to be eligible for the prize drawings in just a moment. We want this to be a social event. You can tweet directly from your console using the Twitter icon at the bottom of your screen, and the hashtag for today's event will be automatically appended. I know many of you have already discovered the questions tab. It's on the left-hand side of your audience console. We'll be doing our best to answer every question that comes in. Thank you, of course, for the hello and good morning messages, but we want your technical questions as well. We'll be doing dedicated Q&A sessions with each of today's expert presenters, and we'll be doing a special Q&A prize that I'll talk about here in just a moment. And finally, resources. We have a number of resources available there in the Handouts tab. These are special links, ebooks, and other resources hand-selected by today's presenters, so make sure that you check those out before you go. Now, when it comes to prizes on the Megacast today, we'll be giving out 5 Mac Minis, brand new Apple Mac Minis, that's right, as well as 7 Amazon $500 gift cards. You must be live in attendance to qualify. I will be announcing the prize winners throughout the event. And on today's event, we're starting a new prize where if you ask the best question, you'll win a $50 Amazon gift card. These are selected based on each session, not one prize for the whole event, but 7, in this case, $50 Amazon gift cards. We will select the prize winners after the event and contact you via email. So keep those good questions coming. All prize winners, of course, must meet the Actual Tech Media prize policy, which you'll find in the Handouts tab. All prize winners must be able to submit an IRS Form W-9 to Actual Tech Media. Now, through the Megacast event series, and thanks to generous prize winners, we have helped you to donate thousands of dollars in prize winnings to charities, specifically the charities you see here on the screen: the Hunger Project, Reading is Fundamental, International Rescue, PetSmart Charities, Cancer Research, and we've done all this in partnership with the Gorilla Guide Book Club as well. You can download free educational IT books at gorilla.guide. The hashtag for today's event is ATM Megacast, and like I said, it'll be automatically appended if you use the Twitter icon on the bottom of the screen. Feel free to follow Actual Tech Media and me, David M. Davis, as well, over on Twitter. You can subscribe to all the Actual Tech Media channels on YouTube, Facebook, and the 10 on Tech podcast. We post all of our latest and greatest content over on LinkedIn, so make sure that you follow Actual Tech Media there as well. You can find our social icons on the top right-hand side of your audience console. Now, before we do a couple of poll questions and I introduce you to today's first expert presenter, I want you to stop for a second, just pause, and think about, what's your disaster recovery plan look like today? What's your recovery point objective? How much data would be lost if you had a disaster? And what's your recovery time objective? How quickly could you get your disaster recovery site and all of your company's critical applications back up and running and your end users productively working so that they can immediately start serving your most critical clients and get back to business? How long exactly would that take, and how much data would be lost? I want you to consider that for a moment. And oh yeah, what if you weren't around to make it happen? After all, it's a scary time for you and your company's data. We all have massively growing data sets. We have data being distributed across mobile and the internet and multiple data centers and service providers. We have data being attacked and sold on the open market. Even our employees' HR records, personal data are being auctioned off. Imagine what it would be like if your company's data was held for ransom. Your most critical company data, conversations between you and your suppliers, your intellectual property. And that's why we have to be prepared. Thankfully, there's new and innovative disaster recovery solutions. Many of them leverage the cloud in some way. Cloud provides that utility-based pricing model. It's always difficult to justify a secondary data center that's identical to the primary data center because of the enormous cost. Well, with disaster recovery in the cloud, you don't need a secondary data center that's identical in every way. You can simply spin up your applications in the cloud if you should have a disaster and only pay for it when you do. So that utility pricing model is very appealing, especially to many CFOs. You also get this infinite scalability in the cloud. You can spin up applications, spin them down, and get that disaster recovery on demand, which is what so many of us need. There's also pre-built disaster recovery solutions, many of which you'll learn about today. Disaster recovery as a service, or DRaaS as it's called, that allow you to automate disaster recovery. This can make disaster recovery easy, and that's something that so many of us would really love to get to. So if you're looking for new disaster recovery and data protection solutions, I encourage you to look for solutions that provide high performance backup and recovery. Recovery is the most important part. They need to be scalable to your data and to the cloud, should you choose to use disaster recovery options in the cloud. Of course, they need to be affordable for your company and your budget. They need to be easy to test. I encourage you to test out all of the solutions you learn about today. Find out which one is right for you and your company, because they need to make disaster recovery easy. You deserve that. And of course, finally, make sure that they have solid support, because everything isn't going to work perfectly the first time. You need to have a real human you can call, get in touch with quickly, who can expertly solve your problems. And with that, it's time to kick off today's event with a couple of quick poll questions before I introduce you to our first presenter. We've got some awesome solutions on the event. So with that, let's get started. All right, I've just brought up our first poll question there. And the question on the screen is, which of these are your top data protection and disaster recovery challenges for 2020 and 2021? And I will share the results of this poll with you so you can see kind of how your concerns compare to the hundreds of other IT professionals on the event today and their concerns. So I'll leave this poll up for just a moment, allow you to answer it. You do it right there in the slides window. Feel free to select one or multiple. I'm sure many of you have more than one concern. Thank you for your responses. While you answer that poll, I do want to call out a handout there in the Handouts tab. It's entitled Q1 2021 Events Survey. And this will actually take you to a survey question. We are doing a prize around this survey. And the question on that survey, if you check out the link there in the Handouts tab, is who would you like to see on our events in 2021? We value your opinions, and we want to invite exciting, innovative technology solutions onto the event. And so we want to hear your thoughts on that survey. And like I said, there is a couple of Amazon $100 gift cards around that. So make sure you check out that handout in the Handouts tab. All right, thank you everyone who responded to that poll. I'm going to go ahead and share the results now. And let's see what we've got. So it looks like 48% of you said affordability. That was the number one challenge or concern that you have around data protection and disaster recovery, followed closely by scalability and performance at 35%, confidence and recovery at 36%, and ransomware prevention and recovery at 32%. There's a lot of 20% responses in there. And then some 3% of you said you had other concerns that weren't listed. And if that's you, just drop that in the questions box. I'm curious to hear what your concerns were. I will share those with everyone here on the event, and we'll use that to improve our poll for next time. But top 2 concerns: affordability, scalability, and performance, followed by confidence in recovery. Actually, confidence in recovery was second. So thank you for sharing your responses to that. Hopefully the presentations on the event today will help you to learn about new and innovative solutions that can help you to overcome these challenges around data protection and DR. And now let's move on to our second poll. Last poll before I introduce you to our first presenter. The question there on the screen is, what's your time frame for adding new or updating existing IT solutions at your company, specifically around data protection and DR? You've got these challenges. You need to do something about them. And so, kind of what's your time frame for updating solutions or adding new solutions related to data protection and DR? I'll give you a few moments to answer that one as well. All right, thank you everyone for the responses to that poll. We do appreciate it. It's good to know that a lot of you have some big plans over the next 12 plus months to update your disaster recovery and data protection solutions or add new solutions at your company. Great to hear. Great to hear that everyone's thinking about DR and data protection challenges. And with that, I'm excited now to introduce you to our first presenter on the Megacast. Welcome, Mr. Jeff Lackey, Cloud SE at Clumio. Jeff, are you there?
I am. Good morning. How are you?
Good morning. Great to have you, Jeff. Take it away.
Thank you. Excellent. Good morning. Good afternoon. My name is Jeff Lackey, Cloud Systems Engineer here at Clumio. Today I'll be talking a little bit about data protection in the public cloud and some of the challenges and growing pains people face on their journey to a hybrid or all-cloud world. One problem statement that we hear often is that data protection is slowing cloud adoption. The standard best practices that I'm used to doing in an on-prem world just don't work the same in the public cloud. For example, high costs. The costs are skyrocketing for long-term retention and compliance. Data vulnerabilities. Data in the cloud is vulnerable to data loss and ransomware. And then finally, restoration complexity. Getting data back requires a series of complex steps, and it's just not very user intuitive, and it just doesn't work very well. So I'll talk a little bit about our standard on-prem data protection that we're all used to and that we've been accustomed to in the on-prem world, right? So we've got our primary storage array that we take array-based snapshots. Normally we keep snapshots around for 1 to 30 days because our primary storage array is our high dollar storage, and we want to be most cost effective with it. From then, we've got multiple layers. So our next layer would be our backup target, right? So your traditional on-prem guys that we've seen for the last couple of decades, and you normally keep data in there for about 1 to 2 years, with an RPO, RTO, minutes to hours. And then finally, you've got your offsite, you've got your Iron Mountain, you've got your tape archive, all that kind of stuff, which we only keep around for probably 7+ years because you only get data back when you need to. So we understand that that's a slow process. And as a result, the cost modeling makes sense, right? So the primary storage array is your high dollar storage. So that's why we only keep 1 to 30 days there, because that's our, we want to be responsible with our resources. And then moving to your primary backup, the cost gets a little bit lower. And then finally, your long-term archive, tape out, Iron Mountain type stuff is the most cost effective. So you see, the longer you keep data, the less expensive it is to kind of keep it around for longer term solutions. However, in the cloud, we don't have any of those options. It's snapshots for everything. We have snapshots for our operational recovery, that 1 to 30 days. For our long-term 1 to 2 year primary backup, it's snapshots. And then guess what? Long-term compliance, that's 7+ years, it's snapshots. So I'll talk a little bit about what options we have today in the cloud world, what existing data protection options are out there. We've got your AWS backup, and AWS likes to tout that it's free to use, and that's true, but you have to pay for all of the resources that AWS backup consumes. So you get automated daily backups, but you're limited on retention. You can only keep so many snapshots in an account. It's complex to manage at scale, and the longer you keep those snapshots, the more expensive it becomes. Right. So then we also have a couple of the other snapshot managers that are out there, which essentially all they're doing is they're not adding a ton of value, but they're adding additional costs. So they're just essentially putting a pretty wrapper around that snapshot approach to make it a little bit more intuitive. But the problems of limited snapshots as well as cost for long-term retention still remain. So tell you a little bit about how snapshots work. You've got your EBS volume, EC2 instance, RDS database, what have you, and then you take a snapshot. So, and as you keep snapping, you're only doing incrementals, right? So the more snaps you do, the longer and the more capacity you're consuming. So after so many snapshots, we realized, all right, we can't keep this snapshot approach up forever. Let's move our snapshots to a lower tier storage, whether it be Glacier or S3 or whatever the case may be, right? So one thing we know is that whenever we move a snapshot to an S3 bucket, is that is a full copy. You lose any of the benefits of that incremental forever snapping when you're moving that snapshot to a full bucket, right? So the cost of capacity continue to increase. But remember, this is all in the same account. So in order to give us that air-gapped ransomware protection, we've got to get that snapshot out of the account and into a different account, possibly in a different region. And once again, once we copy that snapshot out of the account, that is a full copy, right? So as we keep copying snapshots out of the account to give us that air-gapped ransomware protection, the amount of capacity needed to store all of those snapshots is just exploding, and the cost is extremely high. Snapshots were not designed for granular record level retrieval, right? If you had to pull a single file out of a snapshot, it's essentially this 11-step process. So if I just needed one single file out of a snapshot that I took 3 or 4 days ago, I've got to figure out the time period of which I wanted to do the restore, locate the snapshot. I've got to determine the volume size, region, OS, create the EBS volume, mount everything associated with EC2 instance, boot everything, finally search for the file, and finally at step 10, you actually get the file back. And then hopefully you don't forget about step 11, which is to spin everything down, detach it, because if not, you'll have a bunch of orphaned EBS volumes and EC2 instances out there consuming costs, and just kind of that meter keeps running. Typical cloud cost modeling with snapshot managers, you're just adding cost on top of it. So the longer you keep that data, the more it's going to cost you, right? So as you can see, snapshots are great for what they were intended to provide, which is that operational quick recovery. But for long-term retention, it just gets very, very costly. So Clumio, how do we solve this problem? So Clumio protection for AWS resources, specifically EBS, EC2, and RDS, right? So we have all of your different AWS accounts, and what essentially we're doing is we're giving you that full recovery from in-account snapshots, giving you that point-in-time recovery, but also getting that data and copying it out of your account. Right, so you're getting that air-gapped copies from ransomware protections, hacking, bad neighbors, bad actors, all that kind of cool stuff, right? And then also once your data is in your Clumio account, it gives you that long-term retention, giving you granular record level retrieval and exports for legal hold, e-discovery, and data warehousing. So from a granular file level restore perspective, Clumio gives you the ability to skip that 11-step process and just yank a single file or a single directory or object out of that particular cloud resource, EBS volume, EC2 instance, etc. So reducing the time that it takes to restore a file from, sometimes hours or even days in the event the snapshot is that large, down to seconds or minutes. To give you a much faster operational recovery. And then finally, flexibility and restores anywhere you need it. So in this all cloud world, regardless of our data source, whether it be on-prem workloads like VMware or native AWS workloads, EBS, EC2, RDS, cloud workloads, SaaS workloads like Microsoft 365, giving you the ability to give you an air-gapped copy of that data outside of the primary account and intuitive ways to restore that data, whether it's back to the original source or to a completely different source altogether. So giving you a couple of different use cases, possible cloud migration, giving you some disaster recovery tools, assisting with test and development, and then in the future giving you the ability to transform clouds from maybe one cloud provider to the other, decoupling that cloud provider from that data to give you that mobility around moving data around. Okay, so now on for a quick demo. I've talked a little bit too much, so let's see it in action. Today, I will be giving you a quick demonstration of what a day one experience looks like to join the Clumio family to start protecting AWS workloads. In true SaaS form, there's no hardware, there's nothing to rack and stack, there's no software to manage or install. Simply signing up for Clumio, much like you would any other website, and then from there, you're logged into your Clumio dashboard. As you can see, our data sources that we protect today are VMware, AWS workloads, as well as Microsoft 365 workloads. If we wish to protect our AWS workloads, simple as clicking AWS under data sources, click on all accounts, and then from here, we can hit connect account. It's as simple as just copying and pasting your AWS account number, giving it a friendly description, and then selecting which region that AWS account resides. From there, we would click next, and what will happen is we're going to launch a CloudFormation stack wizard, which will essentially deploy a CloudFormation template inside of that specified account, which will deploy all of the Clumio resources needed to do all inventory services, data protection, and data restoration. Once that CloudFormation template is deployed, your AWS account will show up in here as connected to your Clumio account. And as you can see, you can connect multiple different accounts from multiple different regions, so truly giving you a global view of all of your AWS resources data protection. The next day one task would be to create a policy. So that's up here in our top left, and a policy simply defines how often we take a backup and how long we're going to keep it. So it's as simple as just hit the create policy button and then checking which workloads we are going to be protecting. In this case, we'll protect EBS, RDS, and EC2 workloads. From here, you're just defining the frequency of your backups and the amount of retention for each one of those backup points. So if we wanted to replicate that traditional grandfather, father, son relationship, which we're all accustomed to in the data protection space, very simple. Check the box that says take a backup once a day, keep it for 30 days. Check the next box that says take a backup every month, and we can choose to keep those for 12 months. And then finally, take a backup once a year and keep it for 7. So with a single policy, we're able to take care of all of your short-term operational recovery, all of your long-term data protection, as well as your archive within a single policy. At that point, you can hit create, and then from there, you can create as many policies as you need in order to satisfy the business requirement of what our application we're protecting. So for example, I've got gold, silver, and bronze. So particular, maybe gold would be for production, silver would be for test dev, and bronze could be for QA. But you could name these whatever you want. You could have one for HR, one for finance, whatever the case may be. Now that we've got our policies created, the next step would be to actually associate those policies to our AWS resources. So I'll go back into AWS, click on all accounts. I'll open up this particular account in US West Oregon. And now the way we associate our Clumio policies to our AWS resources is via tag. So much like everything else in AWS landscape, tags are heavily utilized. So essentially what we would do is we could utilize existing tags in your environment, or we recommend creating new tags and associating that with your AWS resources. So you go into your AWS console, create a tag. In this example, the tag key would be called protection. And then you can specify multiple values of bronze, silver, gold. And at this point, we can associate each of those tags with a particular policy. So we know that any AWS resource that has the protection key value of bronze will get the bronze policy, and anything that has the gold tag value would get the gold policy. So if you have good tag hygiene, you can know that all you have to do to protect new resources as they come online is tag them appropriately. So as I said, good tag hygiene would then say that you no longer have to log into Clumio every time you add a new resource in order to protect it. Your AWS administrators just know all I have to do in order to back this thing up is put the tag key of protection with the value of gold, silver, or bronze, and they're good to go. Clumio will automatically pick up those newly created resources with those proper tags. At that point, all of those resources would then be started to be protected. We'll get that initial seed done, and then we'll be in our incremental forever stage. When it comes time to do a restore, very simple. We would just select the tab of which resource we're going to do a restore, whether it's an EBS volume, EC2 instance, or RDS resource. So in this example, I'll pick on an EC2 instance. I'll select this particular instance ID that I want to do a restore on. And I have a couple of different options. If it's just a single file that I want to restore, very simple. If I know the name of the file, I can just type it here in the search bar, and this will search all of my backups for any file that matches that keyword. So let's just pretend this is the file that I want. We'll click on next. And in this particular instance, you see I've got 13 copies of this particular file from all of these dates and times. So find the version that is appropriate for you, click on next and hit restore. Very simple. In the example where you don't know the name of the file, but you just remember where it was located, very simple. Click on our date within our calendar. We can hit browse files. And then from here, this is your traditional crawling the file system of that particular EC2 instance to find whatever file it is or folder that you needed to restore. So let's just pretend I wanted the entire root directory in that point, right? So let's check that. Here's our summary of all of the items that we had requested, and then we can hit restore, and that file is now available to us. In the event the entire EC2 instance needed to be restored, pretty simple as well. We can select any date and time that we have a backup for and click on restore. So at this point, we have both basic and advanced. I'll go into advanced to kind of show you some of the cool options we've got. In this example, you can choose to rename that particular EC2 instance. You have the ability to restore this EC2 instance to any account in that region that that instance was protected. So just because this EC2 instance came from account 351 doesn't mean I have to restore it there. I can restore it over into 149 or any other account that I have in that region. So truly giving me a little bit more mobility to restoring my data. Other options around storage networking you can see, so you can get very granular on how you're restoring these particular volumes, which is pretty neat. At that point, you would hit restore, and that EC2 instance would then start hydrating in that targeted AWS account, whether it was the original or a new target destination, right? Next, I'll show you our RDS resources. So I've got a couple of different database engines within my RDS service. You know, I have Aurora, Postgres, all that kind of stuff, SQL Server. I'll go into my Aurora database and kind of show you the options I have on which to do data restoration. So if you wanted to do a simple point in time recovery, very basic, right? We can pick any date and time that we have. So I'll pick on my latest copy and I can hit recover. And at this point, you can choose whichever point in time restore you need. So you can say I want to restore from 6:07 and 10 seconds. I have the ability to rename that particular cluster. Some advanced options I have are adding security group IDs, specifying a KMS key ID, and adding tags. So at that point, if we wish to recover that particular snapshot, we would hit recover, and that that RDS resource would then go back to where we had specified. Another kind of value add we have is we give the customer granular record level retrieval, which is pretty cool. So in this example, I can go on to granular record level retrieval. And here we give you the ability to query the backup and all of the databases associated with it. So in the example that the reason for the restore was just a particular file or row or table was corrupted or needed to be restored, not the entire database, this is a much easier and simpler process. So you can see all of the different database names within this database, and I can run any query, SQL query statement I want upon this backup and get the results that I need. So I'm going to do a simple select all from this particular table statement, and this is going to return all of the records in that particular table. So once again, in the example where the entire database didn't take a dive, it was just one row or one record or one table, I have the ability to crack open my backup and just yank out a single record if I so choose. And at that point, we can initiate that record level retrieval. Very simple. As you can see, this interface is very simplistic, and that's by design. We don't have any training classes. We don't have any certification exams. It's supposed to be very user intuitive and just really kind of point and shoot. So at this point, I'll pause for a quick second, and if there are any questions, I can field them at this time.
Why don't we talk for a moment about trying out Clumio? Tell us about the test run.
Sure, thank you. Yep, so I know everything you saw here was pretty cool, right? But you maybe want to try it for yourself. So Clumio offers a 30-day trial, so you get full keys to the castle to run Clumio in your data center to protect any workloads, whether they're on-prem VMware, AWS, or Microsoft 365. There's a 30-day no-risk trial, so no paperwork, no commitment, just kind of give it a try to see if it meets the needs for your data recovery requirements.
Very nice, and I should point out that that link there on the screen is a hyperlink. It's clickable, so everyone out there in the audience, if you just mouse over the slides window, you see right there, click on that link that says sas.clumio.com/try-free. That will take you to the free 30-day no-risk trial, just 15 minutes to set up. So very cool stuff, Jeff. Thank you again for the demo. I love seeing the product in action. While we take some questions from the audience, why don't we bring up this poll question for everyone out there that says, what additional information would you like about the Clumio solution? And I encourage everyone to respond to that. We do appreciate it. And we'll now get started with some questions. So lots of good questions coming in there. I placed those in the queue for you, Jeff. First one on the top of my queue here, they're asking, can I manage all my AWS accounts in various regions in one view, or do I need to have separate Clumio instances per account?
Gotcha. No, great question. So no, you do not need multiple Clumio instances to manage resources in different regions. You can manage all of your resources in any of the regions that we support from a single Clumio UI, so giving you that kind of global view, that global look and feel, no matter where your resources happen to live.
Very nice. Very nice. And then next question, they're asking, they say this solution sounds awesome for AWS, but can I do a lot of this already with Snapshots today? I think you touched on that a little bit, but do you want to expand a little bit more?
Yeah, so snapshots are great, but we feel at Clumio it's not a complete story to data protection, right? So giving you the ability to do granular record level retrieval with just doing snapshots, as you saw, is very cumbersome, right? That 11-step process that can take hours, if not days, to complete. So not only does Clumio give you the ability to do granular record level retrieval in seconds or minutes, but we also give you that air-gapped protection, right? We're getting the data outside of your account, giving you that immutable, isolated air-gap copy, because with snapshots, everything resides in the account, right? So if your account were to be compromised or hit with ransomware, that hacker has the ability to delete the backup and the primary in one foul swoop. So giving you that air-gap copy outside of the account gives you that ransomware protection that simply snapshots cannot provide.
Got it. Got it. Good clarification there. And then when it comes to restore, this person's asking, what are the options that are available when it comes to restoring data in AWS?
Sure. So whether it's an EBS volume, EC2 instance, RDS database, once your data is in the Clumio account, we give you the ability to restore across multiple accounts. So if you have several accounts in your environment, maybe let's say like a dev or a QA and then production, you have the ability to maybe restore the production database into a test dev environment for your developers to kind of play around with. So that way they're not messing around with the production database. And conversely, you have the ability to promote, take a backup of a resource that was sitting in a developer's account that now is going to be promoted to production. You can have that mobility with your data. So giving you the options, not only granular files, but as well as an entire resources or instances to be able to move them around from account to account is really giving me that nice, pretty wrapper around everything to have a little bit more mobility with your data.
Got it. Excellent. And then there's a couple questions here in the queue about just compatibility with cloud providers. Do you want to talk about that for a moment?
Sure. So today we're natively built in AWS. Under the hood is AWS resources, so we can protect both as a source and a target AWS. We're actively engineering for Azure, which will be released Q1, so just here in the next month or so. And then after that, we'll bring all the same features and functionality in an Azure world that we have in the AWS space. And then finally wrap it up with GCP, right? So long-term goal and vision is to be totally cloud agnostic, being the big three providers, and then also giving you the ability to kind of decouple the data from that cloud provider. So if there was ever an initiative to move from AWS over to Azure and up to GCP and have that multi-cloud strategy, that's our vision, to be able to provide the data protection around that and the mobility aspect to move from one cloud to another. So not locking you in to any one particular cloud vendor, as I said, decoupling that data and be able to translate that to any cloud provider is the goal. So not on the truck today. Today is AWS resources. Azure is here in the next month or two, and then GCP will follow thereafter.
Excellent. And before we go, again, I want to remind everyone to check out the Clumio test run. If you click on the URL right there on the screen. Jeff, I'm afraid that's all the time we have for our live Q&A session here. We keep it fast-paced on the Megacast, but there's at least 23 questions in the queue for you.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
So
if you can
I'll start tackling
get
those.
back to those. Yeah, we appreciate it. Great presentation. Thanks for being on, Jeff.
Very good. Thank you very much. Have a good day.
It's now time for our first prize giveaway. We have an Amazon $500 gift card that's going to Pete Mahone from Minnesota. Congratulations to Pete Mahone from Minnesota. We'll reach out to you to deliver your gift card. And before I introduce you to our next presenter, I want to remind everyone about something I talked about earlier, which is a survey that we're doing for 2021 next year to help us select who we should be inviting to these types of events. There's a link right there on the screen. If you click on that survey link, you can actually find the same link in the Handouts tab. It'll take you to a quick 9-question survey. If you'd like to put in your email address, you can enter to be in another drawing for 2 Amazon $100 gift cards. But of course, we appreciate our audience and we appreciate your support, and we want to hear from you as to who you'd like to see on upcoming events in 2021. So thank you for your participation in that. And with that, I'm excited to introduce our next presenter on today's Megacast. Welcome, Mr. Dave Henry, Product Marketing Manager at HubStore. Dave, are you there?
I am. Thank you very much. So,
great to have you, Dave. Take it away.
All right, we'll do. So everybody, I know everybody's time is valuable. I know there's a lot going on, especially just because it's 2020. So thank you for taking the time to spend with us. Your time is a valuable resource. I'm going to do what I can to make sure we're making the best use of it. And, okay, there we go. I figured out slide advancement now here. So our presentation is about why HubStore is such a smart place for data protection. Before we get into that, let me give you a little background on me so you know who you're listening to. My name is Dave Henry. I am Product Marketing Manager at HubStore. I have been earning a living full-time in IT since January of 1987. So I've picked up a couple things along the way. I've worked in a lot of different data centers, and I've been hands-on with multiple different cloud platforms. And I am the technical guy on the HubStore market. So first, let me say a little bit about HubStore's background. I'll keep this stuff quick and then get to the actual solution stuff, and so we'll spend most of the time there. HubStore was founded 5 years ago. We're based out of Ottawa, Canada, and we started from the ground up by our two co-founders. So because of this, HubStore has no outside investors, no loans, and no debt. This was a large part of my decision to join the company, actually, because what's better than focusing on engagement with the customers, finding out what they need, and on the technology itself, finding out where the customers are going, rather than doing things that will improve, earnings per share or something like that, or do something that the investors think is important. So our business has grown based on our engagement with our customers, looking to what they'll be doing next, continually innovating using an agile development model, and producing high-quality software that has an intuitive and easy-to-use interface. So a quick snapshot of where HubStore is at right now. Our cloud data management platform is currently managing dozens of billions of our customers' objects, and that number just keeps growing. Many of our clients are backing up and archiving dozens of petabytes of data with us, and the amount of data continues to grow. As we all know, it's practically a law of physics that the amount of data you're storing just continues to increase. Since our start, we've actually been able to keep up with a 70% year-over-year growth rate, which, let's face it, is fantastic in any industry. And we've got hundreds of customers, including two in the Fortune 100. You probably recognize at least a couple of the logos that you see on the page here. I'm going to take a moment to talk about one of our customers in particular. I don't know if you saw it, but recently Virgin Hyperloop had their first test drive with live passengers. They didn't get up to the full 600 mile per hour speed that they're looking for, but they're getting there. So you can see from the quote here, I'm not going to insult you by reading it to you, but you can see that they're pretty happy with us. They have well over 100 terabytes of data with us, and with all their engineering and tests that they're running, the data just grows daily. HubStore has streamlined their backup and archive needs through automation, which allows them to focus on their engineering efforts instead of on IT and data protection. We also support their legal and IT security workflows for protection of their intellectual property and also with compliance audits. So data has truly become the lifeblood of modern businesses, and with that, protecting that data is one of the more important priorities for any business that's going to want this, which I'm assuming is all business. Of course, there's more than one approach to data protection that businesses can use, but everyone wants the best protection as cost-effectively as possible. So let's take a look at an analogy. Instead of data protection, think about transportation protection. Automobile owners have two main options for this. First, when you purchase a car, you could buy a second one. So you always have one on standby ready to go in case your primary car fails for some reason. The one downside of that one is it doubles the cost of your initial investment. So the second option, and far more popular since it saves you both money as well as garage space, car owners can buy car insurance. You have an automobile policy that covers the cost of a rental car in case your car is unavailable for any reason. You have protected your access to transportation. The better thing about this is that this option is just a small incremental increase above your original investment. So similarly, having a good solid backup and recovery solution gives you data insurance, or if the data is really the organization's lifeblood, it gives you business insurance. Going the insurance route is also more flexible. My insurance company offers a discount if I pay for the entire year up front, but I also have the option of paying monthly. Similarly, HubStore offers both subscription pricing and no contract pay-as-you-go pricing, allowing you to choose the option that best suits your company's. So IT has changed over, certainly changed a bunch since I started, but it's even changed within the last 5 years or 3 years. The modern IT is looking at staying up to date so that it can keep and meet the needs of those modern businesses. With that, enterprises need modern data protection that has been built for the ways that they're using their data center. So the old way back in the days, enterprise data centers were for supporting large monolithic servers running huge monolithic applications or databases. The focus was on the hardware, your physical servers, your physical networks, and the data center was really another cost center. So enterprises these days are doing things a little differently. Many have adopted virtual first or even cloud first policies. The focus is on application delivery, provided independently of the hardware. Developers and users often don't know, or quite frankly even care, what server or storage they're using. They just care that they're able to access the resources when they want to use them. Enterprises were already increasing their adoption of software as a service or SaaS applications, even before 2020 brought us this current increase in the number of remote workers. For enterprises, it's easy to feel. Let me try that one again. For enterprises, it's easy to see the appeal of these SaaS applications. No need to secure a license key for every user or to worry about updating every device. So, last thing about the modern data centers, today we have software-defined everything. Software-defined storage, networks, and even entire data centers. The data center has shifted from being a cost center to providing a value add to your business processes. So to meet the needs of data centers that are relying on the as-a-service model, HubStore provides our customers with backup as a service and archive as a service. Our cloud data platform automatically keeps your data safe based on the profiles that you specify, and it provides automatic enforcement of the 3-2-1 golden rule of backup. For anyone who's not familiar with the 3-2-1 backup strategy, what it basically just means is that you should have at least 3 copies of your data. The copy that you're using in production counts as 1 copy, so you'd also need to have 2 backup copies. Your data should be stored on 2 different media. In the past, a lot of organizations met this requirement using disk and tape. Today, more organizations are using disk to cloud, or even one cloud to another cloud, or just to a different region within a cloud to meet this requirement. And lastly, at least 1 copy of your data should be stored off-site. The old data center organizations would satisfy this rule by copying data to tape and then shipping the tapes off-site to a warehouse like Iron Mountain. Modern data centers meet this requirement by using the cloud. HubStore keeps your data secure. We're protecting it from theft through end-to-end encryption, and we use immutable storage to protect it from being changed, whether that change is accidental, malicious, or even just due to simple bit rot. HubStore's cloud data platform protects your data better, easier, and a lot more cost-effectively than other systems. So let's look at how HubStore provides this advanced data protection to our customers. You can see on the right there, we have the different elements of our data platform. On the left, that's kind of divided up our capabilities into 4 areas where we can add real value to any organization. So first and foremost, we provide advanced data protection to your on-premises environment, whether it's physical or virtual. This includes servers, shared storage, and virtual machines running on either Hyper-V or vSphere. So I'm going to walk through the typical data flow. I don't have a pointer that I can use, so you're going to have to please just bear with me. So over in the HubSpot data platform box in the upper left, everything starts with that HubSpot web app. That is where you point your browser to access our management console, regardless of how many different data sources you're backing up with HubSpot. For example, you might be backing up both your file server and your vSphere VMs. You use a single unified console for all monitoring and management tasks. To secure that access, if you see in the upper right-hand corner of the platform, we use Azure Active Directory authentication. Multi-factor authentication is available for folks who want that additional layer of security. So it's through the console that you set up your backup policy. What will be backed up, the frequency of backups, et cetera, as well as your retention and tiering policies. How long to keep which data, and which data should be automatically migrated to a less expensive storage tier, and that sort of thing. When a backup job runs, you'll see here, both in the lower left corner of the HubSpot data platform, but also between your data center and us, the HubSpot capture and backup services connect to your data source, and we copy all data that has changed since the last backup. We use that to create a synthetic full, so you both have the option of just doing those incremental restores, or a real disaster has struck and you need to restore everything. We've got you covered. So we grab that data, and then that data is compressed before we copy it into, we're back on the platform right there in the middle, our binary large object, or blob storage. So one note, HubSpot's backup is agentless, which is especially key in virtual environments. As with HubSpot, there's no need to install software on each and every VM, and the backup jobs don't use any of the VM's compute or memory resources. The backups have no impact on VM performance. For virtual environments, you can set policies at any level, whether it be the data center, cluster, host, or even per individual VM. The big advantage of this is that new VMs you create will be automatically protected. For example, if you have a backup policy for the entire cluster, any VMs created within that cluster will automatically have that backup policy applied to them without your needing to take any steps. So there's no need to go out and set up auto discovery to go again. There's no need to add a machine to a list or to install any software on that new VM. So you can sleep easy knowing that all your VMs are protected. Once that backup data is in our cloud, so look over back at that blob storage area there. So once we've got it, we deduplicate that data and compress it before we encrypt it and write it to storage. So the compression lowers your cost per gigabyte, and of course the encryption protects your data from prying eyes. Once the data is stored, you see in the lower right-hand corner of the HubSpot data platform, our indexing service runs through the data, creating a search index, which is stored in SQL. This indexing process is applied to all data, no matter what it's stored. This not only provides you with blazingly fast search results, but it allows you to run a search across all of your data with a single query. This can be especially important during an audit, or if there's any reason for a legal hold. Instead of having to run one search on your VM backup, another search for your file server backup, another search on your SaaS applications, you can do all of it from one single query through the console. And I'm going to talk about one last thing about our content indexing that I see people often overlooking. So that's the transcription service. HubSpot will automatically create transcriptions of any audio and video files we back up. Those transcriptions are added to the search index. That'll give you more thorough search results. So, for example, if for some reason our legal department wants to put a legal hold on anything with the name Dave Henry in it, even if I was in a Teams meeting and that was recorded, so even though my name is not in any of the tags for the file or it's not in the title of the file, it will still bring up that recording as one of the things that is in fact a hit on the search. So that is I don't know. That's just something I think a lot of people look over, so you want to make sure you're aware of that. So we also provide advanced data protection for your public cloud with, infrastructure as a service, or IaaS, or platform as a service, so PaaS. Your data is stored outside. So, basically, this is your public cloud data that is stored somewhere other than in your own data center. Someone else is storing it for you. So this includes today Azure Blob Storage, Azure Files, Azure VMs, and AWS S3 Storage, as well as a few other providers. It's worth noting that we do everything we can to have our backups minimize any data egress costs for you. For example, if you're using Azure as your platform of choice, you'll incur 0 egress charges, as your data will remain within the boundaries of Azure at all times. We also provide advanced data protection for your SaaS applications, your software as a service. This includes Microsoft 365, Box, Slack, and Google Drive, among a couple others. This is your mission-critical data that someone else is storing within their platform. It makes protecting that data even more critical since you aren't the one responsible for keeping the production copy of that data protected. So we have provided support for Microsoft 365. This used to be called Office 365 until about 8 months ago. Microsoft decided that their name wasn't prominent enough in the name, so it's now Microsoft 365. So we've been supporting that since day one. We've added support for all aspects of Microsoft Teams back in April of 2020. So that's been available for a while. More recently, we've added support for Google Drive. So all of your data just stored in the drive, in those drive folders, is backed up automatically. But this includes any data, if instead of the Office 365 apps, you're using the Google Workspace apps like Docs, Google Sheets, or Slides, we're backing up that data too. If you've ever used Google Drive or any of these applications, if you take a look, you go through Windows Explorer, whatever else you're using to get there, and you take a look at those, the file names, what you'll see is they're actually 0 bytes. Now, you know that you've typed more than 0 characters. You've typed at least one, probably several thousand, if not millions of bytes when you get to the images and everything. So where does that pointer go to? Well, it points to where Google has stored that data. Where is that? I don't know. Some process inside Google knows, because when you double click on that pointer, you get to the data. But it's really transparent and doesn't do that. So if you just did a straight file backup of Google Drive, you'd get these 0-length pointers, and when you went to restore them, they probably wouldn't point to the same place anymore. So what we do is we actually extract the documents completely, so that we can ensure that they're backed up, so that you could now restore them to a different place or export them. Again, for example, in the case of a legal hold. So we have many more SaaS options that we're working on. You'll see some of those released in the months ahead. So while SaaS applications are very convenient, many organizations are finding that they increase the difficulty of complying with regulations like Sarbanes-Oxley, FINRA, or SEC 17A-4. You'll recognize that one if you've done business with any of the financial firms. Otherwise, it probably doesn't apply to you. So in general, when you're talking about compliance, there's 3 phases. You're setting the rules, that's easy. Enforcing them, okay, well, that's more difficult. And, being able to prove that you're in compliance with those rules, either for an audit or just for your own peace of mind, that can be very, very difficult. So to make it simpler, HubStore provides full message journaling for Exchange, Microsoft 365, Teams, Slack, and several other chat applications, ensuring that every message is captured as well as any attachments. You also have the choice of which region you're going to use for storing specific data, which will automate your compliance with any data sovereignty regulations that apply to your business. So for organizations that want to do even more with HubStore, we have a complete and thorough software development kit, or SDK. The kit includes complete documentation of our entire API-first architecture. And we also provide some sample applications that can act as good guidelines as you start to develop your own. We have a few customers who are using our SDK to build custom data connectors to backup applications that we don't support currently. For example, a few enterprises have some things that they've developed in-house. You aren't going to be able to find a commercial backup product that actually, interfaces directly with that application. So you can use HubStore's API and set up and your application's API and get things automated for you there. And in some cases, our customers are integrating HubStore directly into their own applications. So if you're interested in getting some more information about HubStore solutions, you'll see here in the client that you're watching this presentation through, up in the upper left-hand corner, you should see the word handouts. If you go in there, you can download a solution brief from us in the handler section. In the handout section. So that will help give you, a more thorough idea than just the diagrams I put on the slides here. If you're so excited about anything you've seen and you just want to take it for a test drive yourself, you can actually start using HubStore right now to protect your virtual machines for vSphere, Hyper-V, or Azure VMs. There's no complex buying process. You just sign up and you can be operational and protecting those VMs within minutes. If you want a better understanding of whether you'd want a dedicated or even a self-hosted HubStore instance, or whether month-to-month pay-as-you-go or a subscription agreement would be better for your organization, contact us. We'll have a solution engineer sit down, and they'll be very happy to walk you through all the options, talk to you about what it is specifically you want to back up, and with that information, they can work with you to find the most cost-effective solution for your data protection needs. And if you're unsure of anything else, hey, just contact us. Feel free to throw us your questions, and we will take care of them. Obviously, if you have any other questions, I hope you've been entering them in the question section here in this client. And that wraps me up.
Great presentation, Dave, as always. I really appreciate that. We do have some questions for you. While we do that, I'm just going to bring up the poll here for the audience that we always do that says, what additional information would you like about the HubStore solution? And I'll leave that up. I encourage everyone to respond to that poll. We do appreciate it. Let's see, Dave, first question I see that came in here, they're asking, they say, you said people are moving away from big applications. Aren't there still a lot of companies running databases on Oracle or SAP?
So yes, there are. A lot of people have migrated to the cloud by, rewriting their applications to be cloud native. To try to build a cloud native version of Oracle or SAP, nobody outside of Oracle or SAP wants to tackle a job that big. It would be millions and millions of lines of code to get that far. So while you're using that, you can run Oracle or SAP on virtual machines. Oracle will try to convince you that you have to use their hypervisor, but it's not true. They give full support for for many customers. They're giving full support for whether you're using vSphere or Hyper-V. So that would be one way we can provide backups for that. And if we see a lot of demand for it, we may. I want to be very precise in my language. If we see the demand, we would certainly look into creating connectors specifically for those applications.
Excellent. All right. Let's see. Next question. They said here, data centers still cost money to run. So how can they be a value add? I think that's in response to a point you made in the presentation.
Yeah. So yes, obviously, if you're running data center on premises, or if you're paying for cloud services from someone, yes, there is a cost. Where the value add comes in is by making sure that data is always available quickly to your business flow and process. If your retail business is like Amazon or anyone else who would order products from online, that database and that ordering system needs to be available 24/7, 365 to your customers. You can't afford downtime, so they're providing value add by giving you that high availability. God forbid you get hit by ransomware or something else. Your value add here is that you don't have to go to the FBI and you don't have to pay any ransom. You can restore everything to some point in time before that and be back up and running again. The other thing is that if you are putting all of your data, a lot of people talk about data lake. Recently, there's no specific definition of that other than you've got data stored from multiple sources in one place. Well, that's great, but data by itself isn't of any value. It's just ones and zeros when you come down to it. But what you can do with it, the insight you can gain from the data, partly enhanced by some really good searches like HubStore provides. You can find out what's going on and get some insight from the data to help you adjust your processes to lead you towards more profitability. Well, that's considered a huge value add.
Got it. Okay. Thank you for clarifying that. Another question here. What exactly is the HubStore web app?
So HubStore web app is, you'll see it as a URL that you'll put in your location bar in your browser. So that will point you. You'll connect to one of our servers in the cloud, and that will be what you log in. So you can manage your HubStore backup jobs, monitor everything from anywhere you are. You can even use the browser on your phone if you all of us like to actually be able to take some time off on our weekends, but having run data centers myself, and then several of you may be running data centers, you kind of always have that little thing at the back of your mind saying, well, is everything going okay? Well, great. If I can just glance at my phone while I'm at the amusement park with my family, waiting in line, I can look and say, yep, everything's running fine, and I don't have to know that I don't have to worry about it. Or if somebody calls in and, has an emergency call, they need to restore, great. I can restore what the data they're looking for from that phone, and hopefully have it done before we make it to the front of the line, because I don't want to be using my phone in that way during the roller coaster.
Got it. That makes sense. Okay. Excellent. Let's see. It looks like we're running out of time here in our live Q&A, Dave. I'm afraid I really enjoyed chatting here about this. Lots of great questions coming in. I've put the remaining questions in the folder there for you if you have time to respond to those. We would appreciate it. It's great to have you on, Dave. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And again, thank you, everybody, for taking the time for this. If you have put a question into the queue there, I will stay on long enough afterwards to make sure I've answered all of them, and I'll make the answers public so that more than the rest of you can benefit from the answers to someone else's question.
Excellent. Thanks, Dave. And also,
I
want to remind everyone. Excellent. I want to remind everyone, of course, visit hubstore.net to try out the HubStore solution for yourself, or speak to a technologist there to get a demo. You can, of course, also email sales@hubstore.net, and finally check out the handout that's available for download there in your audience console on the HubStore solution. And now it's time for our first grand prize announcement. We have a Mac Mini going out to Kirk Lewis from Idaho. Congratulations. And an Amazon $500 gift card going to Eric Vermalo from Pennsylvania. Congratulations to both of you. I'll post the winners there in the questions box as well. And with that, I'm excited to introduce our next presenters on today's Megacast. Welcome, Mr. Matt Wallace, Chief Technology Officer at Faction, and Mr. John Drake, Senior Vice President of Strategic Alliances. Matt and John, are you there?
I'm here.
Yeah, great to be here.
Great to have you both. Take it away.
Awesome. Well, thanks for having us. Super excited today. We have gotten to join a couple of these actual tech events, and it's always fun to talk about what we're doing around multi-cloud. But I'm pretty enthused about talking today because we're getting away a little bit from what we talk about with our multi-cloud platform in the general sense. And we're going to get to talk about much more specifically how we can do data protection with some of our offerings tied into this fabric. We call this optimizing backups and defeating ransomware with a multi-cloud resiliency strategy, but there really is a lot more to this, and I think you'll understand that as we kind of dig in, because it's some pretty exciting stuff. We've broken some real ground, leveraging what we have as a multi-cloud platform, but pairing it up with our partners at Dell. And for those of us who haven't heard from Faction before, we've been around, for more than a decade, have amassed a body of intellectual property, a whole bunch of industry, partnerships and sort of certifications and so on. But let me dig in, and we'll talk a little bit more. As was mentioned, I'm the CTO at Faction. My team does a lot of the kind of heavy lifting of design and implementation of these things, and I've been doing kind of everything tech for far too long now. And I love our intersection with cloud services. I've been an enthusiast around cloud for a really long time, since I was using Amazon in some of its earliest days. Like I say here, literally before EBS volumes existed. So it was a little painful when you had to get all your data out of S3 after booting from a generic image. John, you want to say a word?
Absolutely, Matt. Thank you. Just excited to be here. John Drake, I've got a background in data protection and really working with these technologies and helping to solve client problems. So excited to be here and get to share the stage with Matt.
Yeah, and the truth is, John actually is so deep in some of these technologies because he had such deep involvement in the past in his kind of history that I kind of feel like he may have actually known a heck of a, maybe forgotten more than I know about a lot of these things. So really great to have him on the call. So let's talk a little bit about trends. I mean, what's interesting that's going on here is we're seeing tons of organizations are going, multi-cloud and hybrid cloud. It's kind of a no-brainer. You see this massive growth in cloud services, but of course, this all in on public cloud generically, and especially a single public cloud doesn't make a ton of sense for a lot of people. Of course, there's also, a lot of effort to find data protection for containers. So containers obviously give this fantastic backplane for doing infrastructure automation, orchestration, and giving you this substrate, if you will, this foundation for having workloads that are truly portable based on an open source platform where you can kind of understand, if you can run a Kubernetes cluster in, 3 different clouds plus your on-prem data center, you can really move workloads in a compatible way between those in a way that was kind of challenging to do before. And of course, beyond that, there's a ton of investment. This is a great time for digital transformation. What we see going on here in the sort of COVID era, of course, is that the forward-looking enterprises are using this time to retool, to transform, and it really is those people who are investing in digital technologies, cloud transformation, digital transformation that are winning in the marketplace. They are delivering new experiences. I said at some point recently that COVID has shown that it's not always the strongest that survive, but it's enterprises that are the most adaptable to change. The agile enterprise is the one that has been just winning time and time again during this kind of time of rapid change. And I think the one thing we can all count on is that change is a constant, and even that the pace of change is accelerating. And so being ready for disruptions of your strategy is part of your strategy. And finally, of course, data protection is not a simple business, and that becomes even more true when you start thinking about it in the context of workloads moving around, hybrid cloud, multi-cloud strategies. And so, a lot of what we are doing here can address some of that, right? On the other hand, a whole bunch of challenges associated with cloud, especially things around data protection. People find that they are spending too much money on cloud. Even though there's a huge adoption of public cloud, there's also this growing trend of hosted private cloud off-prem, and you're definitely seeing even the public cloud providers themselves are diving into this. This hybrid market is now understood to be very serious, and so you have obviously things like Amazon ECS Anywhere that was announced at reInvent last week, things like AWS Outposts, things like Azure services for monitoring things on-prem, et cetera, et cetera. No matter who the CSP is, you're seeing them start to branch out, reach into the other cloud providers. But I think the funny thing is Amazon didn't say this explicitly, but ECS Anywhere can actually run inside of Azure GCP. Anywhere doesn't just mean on-prem, it means really anywhere. And so it's interesting to see them use these tools to kind of attack the use cases that exist in other clouds. Even Google with their BigQuery offering now can reach into Amazon and Azure. And so it's pretty interesting around those things. And of course, there's still this trend of people winding down data centers. And of course, it makes sense as you move workloads to public cloud and you adopt more of a hybrid model. In some cases, you start to say, hey, the number of use cases that I have for my on-prem data center or data centers has reduced. Like something we've seen a ton of at Faction is we've worked with a lot of clients who shifted disaster recovery into Faction's hybrid disaster recovery services. And as a result, we saw them kind of pare down from, say, 3 data centers to 2 data centers because they took the DR data center out of the picture. So interesting things around data protection, right? I mean, people want to do things in public cloud, and it's true for all environments, but I think I'm kind of focused a little bit here on things that you can do data protection-wise in the cloud because we're revolutionizing to a certain extent what you can do in public cloud. But of course, they want to back up data. They want to restore it on the demand. They want to certainly be able to have low-cost storage. And I think, you know, the bar continues to be pushed down. We want to find the cheapest possible place. You know, and for many vertical industries, we have found, of course, that it's not just about backups, but about retention that is tied to compliance, right? So we have customers in the financial space where they're going to save every single transaction for 7 years, and they're going to archive everything. We see them doing roughly 0 restores in all of that time in many cases, or it's a once in a blue moon type of event. You know, likewise, if you think about this from a public cloud standpoint, of course, you can implement a lot of these things in public cloud, but some of the things that we find people are running into, right, is this cost explosion from their estimate to the actual. So they do a calculation based on, say, AWS Glacier, but then they realize there's a lot of stuff they're going to have to tier into S3 before they form it into archives. They might need a warm tier before it gets into the archive. They don't calculate for all the API calls. They realize that, you know, they have to do some restores. It could be actual events like a ransomware, which I think is money well spent to restore them. But they don't maybe calculate on, oh, hey, our auditors actually want us to pull up 2% of this data to show that it's real. Well, that's an expensive proposition then. They didn't budget for that. Of course, security and compliance challenges. Well, one of the vectors that people have obviously wrestled with from a public cloud standpoint is things like credential theft. It's a really powerful thing that in public cloud you can use APIs to drive programmatic security and compliance. But it's a challenge because if somebody gets your credentials, they can also programmatically steal your data. And so there's sort of an aspect of separation, almost like an air gap between the credentials, you know, and authorizations that are protecting your backup data as that sort of safe repository versus those that are used in your main sort of cloud properties. Lock-in, and so I mean retention and cloud selection, big challenge here. If you want to be able to leverage multiple clouds, put data between clouds, have, you know, some sort of avoidance of vendor lock-in, that becomes a challenge if you're dealing with long-term retention. Can you imagine what it's like to have, you know, an Oracle database dump that you write into an archive tier once or twice a day that you're going to save for 7 years, which, you know, at some point ends up being terabytes, petabytes of data. But then you have an initiative that says, hey, we need to migrate from cloud A to cloud B. Well, think about the cost and the effort and the complexity of moving that data. Of course, restore time is also challenging. I mean, at the end of the day, it's one thing to want and receive really inexpensive storage, but it's another when your workflows have to account for, you know, 10 or 12 hours before you can actually get data back into your hands. And a multi-step process, right? Because if you're thinking about some of the cloud archives tiers like a Glacier, you actually have to restore it into S3, then you have to retrieve it from S3. Does your tool set support that? Do your ops procedures support that? There's some complexity there. And of course, lots of enterprises have existing tools and they'd like to leverage them. There's not necessarily an easy workflow to implement all of that on the public cloud side. Now, of course, there's all kinds of issues here related to security and compliance, right? So you have a whole suite of bad actors. There was a story that I read maybe a year ago. It was about essentially hackers who were recruiting hackers to do ransomware attacks on people. And they were actually offering $750,000 a year salaries for you to basically sit somewhere and compromise people. And it's weird because these are super anonymous job postings because they're literally hiring you to commit crimes. But it's amazing how industrialized this is, that there's job postings that are incredibly lucrative for people who are really good at going out there and compromising tons of systems so they can extort Bitcoin out of people. Unbelievable. But there's a whole host of other threats. At one point, I built an extremely large managed security practice in the early days, in the late 90s. And we only had one internal compromise of systems ever, very smart security team, but it was total insider threat. It was one of our senior engineers' roommates who used equipment that was in his abode to basically compromise our infrastructure. Strange how those things happen. And of course, there's all the higher order things. You know, a while ago, Google sent me the notification that, hey, you should enable multi-factor with a hardware key because you are being targeted by, like, you know, nation state actors or other people that are determined to get into your email. I don't know why it'd be me, you know, but I ordered one of those hardware tokens to try to protect my Gmail account. But even those types of things are becoming more and more widespread. Even kind of accessibility of things like SMS spoofing attacks so that people can actually get the text message to do the phone number confirmation was one of the reasons they started recommending hardware tokens over just text message confirmations. You think about this, and of course you saw the Tesla thing in the news, right, which was really actually foreign actors trying to bribe a Tesla employee with $1 million in order to help them compromise Tesla on the inside. And thankfully for Tesla in this case, he went to the FBI and they were able to thwart the attack and get some more information, but it's crazy. Some good questions coming into about this, and I will dig into some of these. So what does this mean? How can we help you? Amazing thing that we have here. So the key thing that Faction is doing is we are taking pools of storage exposed with this cloud control volume product. And what it is different types of capabilities, you know, archive, super performant flash, and in this case, a data protection tier powered by Dell PowerProtect, which has its heritage in the data domain product space. And it's plugged in through Faction's Internet Fabric into multiple clouds at the same time. The way Faction's Internet Exchange works, our network fabric, is that when you get this product from us, we connect it to this multi-cloud fabric, and you can choose how to provision all of the bandwidth associated to one or more clouds. So you can have all the bandwidth going to Amazon, all of it going to Azure, and you can move it around on the fly, which of course enables incredible use cases here. Like you can literally back up your data from Azure, and if you decide one day you want to do a restoration to Amazon, you can actually go to our portal, reconfigure the bandwidth, so we'll plumb a pipe into your Amazon VPC, and you can start doing a restore. All of that is actually included in the service, so there's nothing more for you to buy or configure. You just get virtual interfaces sent to you. You say yes and attach it to your virtual gateway, and you are good to go. It's sitting in the middle, and we are in data centers that are 100% designed and oriented around high throughput, low latency, extreme security. We're plugged directly into the CSP equipment. And so because we're so adjacent, it looks like on LAN. So imagine if you had a data domain system, right? Giving you this repository where you can write data, giving you incredible dedupe that can go easily up to 20 or 30 to 1. And you could write data to that from one cloud, and you were actually able to then restore that to any other cloud, but they all look like they were on LAN together. That's effectively what we're doing. Pretty amazing. So of course, you know, you can do this for anything that plugs into those environments. You can use pretty much any backup software you want. A lot of them have deeper integrations with the platform. You can do DR to the cloud, because if you're backing up on premise, you can also replicate to us and use the replicated copy to do restores. And remember, because you're replicating to us and we are keeping it directly adjacent to the cloud, super high bandwidth, low latency restore. Again, it feels like it's in the cloud, but you're having that full compatibility with your systems on-prem if you have data domain as well. And of course, if you've got backup software on-prem that's capable of writing to a remote data domain, that works the same way with our service. So cyber recovery is a huge big deal here. We actually have formulations of this where we can create air-gapped environments, worm environments, so actually create these sorts of scenarios where you can have fully compliant vaults with worm mode enabled, so you can actually show to an auditor everything gets backed up, actually can't be deleted, but we're bringing this capability to the hybrid and the multi-cloud environments. So there's a kind of a lot to process there, but it's really incredible actually about how how flexible and how powerful it is. Okay, real quick here, just want to talk about how big of a deal this is from the concept of deduplication. So I was mentioning, obviously, because this is powered by PowerProtect with that data domain heritage, incredible ability to get deduplication here. And, real world use cases, depending on exactly what you're writing, I go anywhere from, maybe 7 to 1 up to, we've seen 45 plus to 1 on things like database dumps, maybe even higher if you're writing a database dump and there's not a ton of change rate, right? You're only really writing the deltas. And so we've actually encountered customers who are writing literally petabytes over the course of years because they're doing RMAN dumps from their Oracle database on a nightly basis, and they're accumulating every single dump just in the raw. And yeah, they're storing it in an incredibly cheap tier of storage, but because the change rate isn't that high, they end up writing, petabytes and petabytes and petabytes, when on our platform, they could have gotten, 60, 70, 80 to 1 deduplication. And so we can actually reduce the costs even to below a Glacier level. Of course, it's super use case dependent and workload dependent. But what's interesting is how flexible this is. Over time, there's this set of tools like the RMAN agent for Oracle, like BoostFS for Linux, which actually lets you have essentially a local file system mount that you can write to. And it's really interesting because that means you write data to that, and it actually does deduplication in that driver at the OS level before it sends it across the wire. So even from a bandwidth standpoint, even from the clouds where we don't get to zero egress charges, from an egress standpoint, imagine being able to dedupe all of the things you want to write out of the cloud and backing up, and you actually save on egress charges, because if you have duplicate data in Azure and AWS and you're backing both sets up, if they are duplicates, that's not actually sent over the wire using these tools. So we save you operational costs. Then, of course, what we find is that customers doing this now are actually doing this backup. If they are backing up out of the cloud, they're doing it out over the internet, like cloud to cloud or cloud to on-prem. And so in many cases, they're paying internet egress fees or things like that, which are 5 to 10x what they would have to pay coming out of the faction connection. Because even on the Amazon side, where we don't have zero egress like we do in Azure, like we do in Oracle, the Amazon side is still over Direct Connect, so it is a tiny fraction of what you'd pay for the internet egress. And remember, that's included in the service. So pretty powerful set of things here, allowing you to get data to the cloud from on-prem, back up data out of the cloud, and then actually be able to back up and restore between clouds. And I really wanted to cover this too, because this is powerful. We encounter tons of customers who, whether it's single cloud or multi-cloud, they have data in one cloud, they want to back it up, they need to ship it to another region for compliance or operational reasons, and they want to be able to restore it in the second region. So, modest proposal time here. Instead of doing that inside of the CSP, writing it into an object bucket and replicating that object bucket between regions, which means you pay for the object storage in both regions, which means you have to pay for the replication costs. You can leverage our service. You're actually going to write the data in, super cost effective, and then we actually include the replication between these two regions, and we can plug them into multiple clouds on each side. So you're getting this, 8x sort of value, because you are not only getting the 2 copies of the data that you need, the replications included in the service when you have those 2 copies, but on each side of that equation, you can connect to all these clouds. And, beyond the clouds we've been showing on this picture, we support other endpoints like Oracle, like IBM Cloud. And of course, on both sides, we also support you bringing in private carrier connections as well. So if you want to have 10 gigs and replicate in and out on-prem, we support that completely. So really flexible. Now, let's hold on for a second, because it's about more than backup. And one of the interesting things that we have found is that once people are doing this with data, whether they're backing it on-prem headed to the cloud, which is more of a use case, or if they're doing it in the cloud, if they have a production copy of data that they want to do backups, and they have this sort of backup copy of data, if you've got that second copy, how are you going to use it? And this is where things get really interesting from a multi-cloud standpoint, because there are all these services across the clouds that do analytics, and there is a huge variance in what they can do. You may find that for one use case, AWS recognition is the way you want to do image processing because, say, for example, it's better at facial sentiment analysis. But maybe for a different team, they've got the same data, the same images, the same video feeds, but they want to do something completely different with it, like analyze foot traffic patterns in the store. And they want to use Azure Computer Vision because it's way better at counting people and recognizing the direction that they're oriented and so on. Those are SaaS level services, and those are your application teams trying to make a choice. And if you can't give all of them access to the same data, you miss out on the innovation across these cloud services. And it's sort of a complex point on one hand, but also a simple point on the other, because there are so many cloud services, you know that they are growing more and more unlike each other. And the ability that you have to leverage the same data across all these services is just literally a sort of like thrown inside benefit of the solution. Why go and back up and throw something into an archive tier that looks like tape where you can never get at it for any real purpose, when we are giving you the same economics, but giving you a live copy by providing this world-class deduplication that gives you better economics, but actually makes it so you don't have to restore it with 12-hour restore times and added cost if you want to actually take advantage of using that data. And so I'm really proud of the solution because it really allows people to get a lot more value out of that data. So with that, I think we could jump into some questions. Somebody asked, how did you get $0 egress charges from Azure? We're leveraging a particular part of the Azure platform that we're able to do because we are at scale. We've worked with the Azure folks over time. I would say, across the CSPs, we're incredibly sophisticated with our networking. And you'll actually find for our performance-oriented products, we actually can drive literally 2 terabits per second into 3 CSPs at once. It's kind of unreal. We have a white paper coming out where we do this with a high-performance genomic analysis workload. And so backup and recovery is sort of like easy mode, I would say, from a throughput standpoint. But we have an architecture built on top of ExpressRoute Direct, where we provision ExpressRoute local circuits. And since we actually have the gear so proximate, makes it very easy for us to do the $0 egress things. They also asked, when you restore, do we pull from your copy or from the Azure Cloud backup? You're not backing up in Azure Cloud with this solution, or you don't have to. Now, we'll accept data from anywhere, and of course, we don't care if this is the secondary copy or the tertiary copy. You can use the service how you want. But at the end of the day, everything that integrates with data domain, PowerProtect as a platform can be leveraged. So it goes as simple as an NFS mount, which you can just write to and restore from. But also there's a host of tools, obviously, pretty much. Data domain, I think John could vouch for, has been around a long time, has a pretty ubiquitous adoption. It's just never been something you could really do well in the cloud, other than a virtual edition you could plug in the cloud. We're taking this to a whole nother level because we can go much larger scale, go multi-cloud, get the deduplication across clouds, and so on and so forth. Tons of advantages here. But pretty much every backup solution on the planet can integrate with this out of the box. But it's not just that, because if you want to do your own thing, saying database dumps or things, even if it wasn't something that had a pre-built integration, like the Oracle RMAN integration box, you can actually still leverage this just with kind of vanilla NFS. Somebody asked if you can do hybrid backup and Oracle database real-time replication. We don't handle things at the database layer, and so you absolutely could use something like Oracle Data Guard to ship to a secondary copy and then do dumps from there, or any other sort of integration. I think that the typical integration for this is the RMAN integration. There is actually a plugin directly for Oracle that will kind of leverage the hood, so there's not a lot for you to manage. And it'll do full dumps. And of course, the nice thing about it is you're only going to be backing up incremental data from RMAN. So it looks like RMAN, but instead of getting true full backups, well, how should I put this? You are getting full backups, but you're only having to write incremental data, because on the back end, the logical reconstruction of that can restore any of those checkpoints, any of those points in times, but it's all completely unique data, which is one of those things that leads to those incredible dedupe numbers. And it's amazing to think about a live copy where you can restore from any point in time, even 5 years ago, at a rapid pace, but then actually have glacier type or less economics from a cost standpoint, with all this networking included. I think that's the amazing thing too, is that we've actually solved all the network problems of multi-cloud for you, and it's built into the service at that incredible value. We had somebody ask about the PCI policy. So we actually have a whole host of compliance efforts on the faction side that kind of help you maintain your compliance stance. And I mentioned Worm, of course, that helps you achieve your compliance objectives. On our side, we are Type 2 SOC 1, Type 2 SOC 2 compliant. We are HIPAA certified. We are going to be high trust certified too, which is really the gold standard. I think in the next couple of months here, we're preparing for the audit for that. So we've really taken it to a next level, and that brings along with it really compliance with NIST 853. For PCI, all the things that we provide are PCI capable. In other words, all the things that you need to do to meet the 12 pillars of PCI compliance, we have built into our platform. And of course, most of those are being audited as part of the high trust standard. We don't have a PCI ROC, report on compliance, that kind of makes that into a completely turnkey process, but we can actually work with your auditor to make sure that those boxes are checked off for you. Awesome. Super
Lots
excited.
Of great questions. Yeah. Lots of great questions coming in, Matt. I'm afraid we're running out of time here on our live Q&A, but I wanted to ask you if folks are interested in the Faction solution for improving their disaster recovery stance, what should they do to get started?
Yeah, I mean, I think the easiest thing to do is to head over to the factioninc.com website and take a gander at some of the material that we've got there for you. But certainly reach out. We'd be more than happy to talk about this. We've obviously been doing our cloud control volumes, which is multi-cloud storage, for quite some time. But bringing this capability, this massive multi-cloud dedupe into the platform is a relatively new offer that I think just really unlocks a host of new amazing use cases for folks who are trying to adopt cloud and multi-cloud and deal with data protection. And I think things like the worm compliance really make it a sort of best-in-class way to deal with things like ransomware and compliance, even for highly regulated industries.
Absolutely. Yeah, sounds like an incredible solution, incredible performance that could help so many companies out there. Always an excellent presentation, Matt. Thank you so much for being on the event today. And thank you to John as well.
Yeah, thank you.
For more information on Faction, check out the Faction handout right there. If you click on that URL, that will take you to factioninc.com, where you can request a quote and get more information as well. There's an overview information immediately there on the homepage on their data protection solution powered by cloud control volumes, as well as the Faction hybrid disaster recovery as a service offering. So make sure that you check that out before you go. And now it's time for our next prize announcement. We have another grand prize. This is for another Mac Mini going out to Jonathan Verinder. Jonathan Verinder from Texas, and Melissa Mason is the winner of our next Amazon $500 gift card, Melissa Mason from Washington. Congratulations to all the prize winners. I'll post the prize winner names there in the questions box as well. And now I'm excited to introduce our next presenter on today's Megacast, welcoming Jesse, Solutions Architect at Druva. Jesse, great to have you.
Good. Great to be here. Thanks for having me. Can you hear me? Just want to make sure.
I can, yeah.
Awesome, perfect.
Take it away whenever you're ready.
All righty. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. My name is Jessica Chappis. I'm the Director of Solution Architects over at Druva. I've been in the data protection space for 20 years now, which just seems like a lifetime. But I've architected and supported many different vendors in the space, many different solutions, and I joke around that I love cloud backup, which is what I'm going to focus on today. It's really what Druva focuses on as a solution, as a cloud first and in SaaS. But really, from a problem-solving side of it, as someone who's architected, products in the past, working for a company that's extracted all that out and simply delivers a solution you ultimately are architecting for, really changes the game and I have a lot of fun there. Let's get right into it. So from a objective standpoint, in a summary, we're going to go through, I want to give an overview of Druva Cloud Backup, probably kind of a really high-level view. Druva does a lot, and I'm going to focus in on some specific use cases. So we're just kind of a summary of some of the challenges that our customers have around IT resiliency, data protection, and so on. We'll focus on the workloads today, VMware, Oracle, SQL, and NAS and file systems. Like I said, Druva does a lot of different solution sets, but I'm just going to keep it focused today for the call. And then just discuss some of the additional feature functionality around our disaster recovery as a service for VMware and what we offer for ransomware protection as well. And then we'll go into some next steps. There we go. All right. Druva is a data protection as a service provider. So everything we do is software as a service, cloud first. Druva manages its cloud inside of AWS globally. So our customers don't have to be AWS customers. We've just chosen AWS as our cloud partner. Going on 8 years now with AWS. And so we built and designed and architected our solution from the ground up inside of AWS. So we use all native AWS technologies. And as AWS has evolved over the years, we've been able to evolve and offer additional services and solutions, build them into our product sets, and ultimately with the goal of delivering more features to our customers at a lower cost. So from a data source standpoint, we support multiple different data sources. So the data center and the remote office focus on VMware and Hyper-V from a virtualization standpoint. Workloads like NAS, Oracle, SQL, and obviously Linux and Windows servers. It is a direct-to-cloud model, so from a customer standpoint, they just go and install software at the source, and then Druva kind of takes care of the rest from a transport and storage standpoint. We do have an optional on-premises cloud cache that if the customers want to keep some data local, we can do that as well. It's all software-based. We provide the software, customer provides the hardware. Generally, we see this in customers with low bandwidth sites in robo scenarios, or in any scenario where the restart recovery times might not be met by the amount of bandwidth that they have at that site. But we manage all the source ID duplication, which is global, and we do encryption of the data, replication of the data once in the cloud, so we're storing 3 copies of every block of data, and so on. So all that's just built into the solution, ready to go. Everything we do on the VMware side applies to VMC within AWS and Dell EMC today. So whether it's an on-premises VMware environment or a VMC environment, it's the same experience with us. Simply deploy our virtual proxy and you're off and running. We also offer solutions to back up native cloud workloads, so specifically the G Suite, Salesforce.com, and Microsoft 365 suite, as well as new services running in AWS around FSx and EFS. So we see a lot of our customers, generally have workloads or are adopting data sources in all these different environments. And as a SaaS provider in the data protection space, they look to us to help solve those challenges, and that's how it's how we're kind of solving these issues with our customers as these workloads evolve and are being adopted out in the field. And then we also have an award-winning solution for laptop and desktop backup as well. So we are the leader in that space as well, where we're protecting data on the edge, right? User-based data that's sitting out on a laptop and efficiently protecting that up to the cloud. And then we also have a DR service solution for VMware. So this is where we can take VMware backups, regardless if they were the sources in an on-premises environment or a VMC environment, and we can orchestrate and recover those VMs in the customer's VPC in AWS and automate disaster recovery runbooks and application recovery and so on. And then some additional feature functionality that we've driven out of this solution to date. One is ransomware protection. So we started months back building in anomaly detection within our solution. So being able to raise alerts when we see a high amount of data change, right? So kind of as a early detection to something like a ransomware, and then building in the ability to quarantine and isolate backup copies so that they can't be restored back into your environment. Even taking as far as being able to delete specific files out of a backup set within the cloud. So we can work with customers when they're if they are hit with a ransomware, they've gone through their normal mitigation procedures, discover the objects are compromised, figure out where they've been hit, where these where the issue is, and then they can go to our solution and actually quarantine the backup copies or delete them, right? It's up to them, so that they don't reintroduce it into their environment. And then as an additional protection gap within an environment, Druva being a cloud-first provider, the data being stored in the Druva cloud, there's no root access to that data as well. So it's completely air-gapped and isolated from the customer's environment. Essentially, there's no way from a ransomware attack at a customer to impact their backup data. It's completely isolated. And then we've introduced, we've had for a few years now, e-discovery and legal hold functionality built into our solution. So the ability to search across data sets, look for metadata, files, and so on, and then actually put data on legal hold, retain that data, preserve it for whatever reason necessary, and then actually be able to serve it up for third-party access, either through like e-discovery applications or just simple browsing of the data and downloading data sets. So just gives you a kind of a bird's eye view of what the platform is at Druva and where our focus is. We're really focused on traditional data sets that customers are using today, but also the new workloads that they're deploying wherever those may be. All right. And then from a benefit standpoint for our customers, one is just security of the data, right? As a provider of data protection, that's our goal, right? That's the service we're delivering to our customers. So, Druva's done the work in the back end. We've architected, we're audited. We have, our job is to protect our customers' data. So as we get into the next generation of data protection, that's become an enormous risk factor for customers, right? As their backup data now is a target, for things like ransomware and stuff. So, kind of taking the advantage of having a provider that's their job, right? That's what we're delivering. Cost saving is always huge, right? We're eliminating lots of infrastructure, right? Backup data is the majority of customers' data, right? It's copies of copies of copies. And so being able to just, have a provider like us store that data in the most optimized and secure fashion for you and only pay for what you consume drives down costs significantly. And then just save time with simplicity, right? Again, not having to architect out the infrastructure of a backup solution saves a lot of effort. A lot of, backup infrastructure is constantly being right-sized. It's constantly being re-architected. Resources run thin. You got to purchase more, either servers or storage or whatever it might be, moving copies around, managing all those buckets of data. As a cloud provider, you simply, with the Druva solution, you simply set your backup policies and then we take care of the rest. Right? So kind of from a shift that's going on in business resiliency around data protection, right? Kind of the old ways of doing it, in our eyes, there's, from a duplicate data management, you have lots of hardware and software, multiple vendors, right? And this just leads to massive costs. So whether it's backup servers, backup storage, appliances, whatever it might be, just inherent to backup and recovery is redundancy, which means you're generally going to have, 2 or 3 copies of your data and entities managing that data. The ability, the infrequent recovery, validation, and cumbersome management, right? Just this idea of, again, having to always go in and make sure that the backup environment's healthy so that your data protection policies can continue running, right? It's very important because if that environment stops working, it kind of everything comes to a screeching halt there, and it puts you into a lot of risk. And then complexity and management just, again, it exposes those risks. And so from a SaaS backup standpoint, right, it's just one copy of the data to manage. Behind the scenes, that's Druva's job of duplicating the data, managing the data, and securing the data. But from a customer viewpoint, it's simply one bucket now that they have full management control over. But is able to deliver everything that's required from their standpoint. Simple and testable recovery options and on-demand scalability, right? You never have to. The beauty of a solution like Druva is that the infrastructure is there; it's ready to go. There is no cap. You just consume it when you need it and only pay for what you use, right? So it's just what you want out of a cloud-based solution. And then just, again, the simplicity of just being able to define the backup policies and let the SaaS solution take care of the rest, right? Again, our job in the back end is to ensure that data is available, ensure it's, the resiliency, the redundancy is all built into the platform itself and managed by us. So we're going to focus on the workloads. So again, VMware backup, and we'll talk about our cloud disaster recovery option. We'll go into Oracle and SQL protection for on-premises, and in the cloud, and then protection of NAS file servers and managed file systems. So from a VMware standpoint, very slick solution that we offer, very simple. It's an agentless VMware agentless VM protection option. So we deploy our Druva proxy on premises. You register that against your account in the cloud, and then that proxy is the mechanism that's going to manage the backup procedures. We're going to leverage all the APIs within VMware to run our backups. And again, the proxy is the only thing that has to communicate with the cloud. We're doing block level source side global deduplication on all the data. And then we're doing ever incrementals. So there is no real concept of a synthetic full or having to do a full or periodic fulls. It is all built in, very efficient, and designed just to move the least amount of data that's required to do the backups. We do auto discovery, protection of virtual machines based on affinity, so you can create policies that automatically capture new VMs, new workloads when they're created, assign specific backup policies. Always change those later on if you have to. But again, to ensure that all your data is getting protected. All the security is built in, so we're using TLS tunneling and 256 AES encryption for the data at rest. We have a menu full of security certifications that we have. We always have security discussions with our customers, and it's usually topic number one. But we generally get chosen by our customers based on our security model over some competitors. App-aware REST processing for SQL databases, so the ability to back up SQL transaction logs at the VM level just by clicking a button and setting transaction log backup. So again, we can do SQL without installing an agent if it's in a virtual machine. Auto scaling of our proxies just makes it a lot easier to manage this. So if you have a new deployment, you can deploy a bunch of proxies, scale it up, get the first backups done, and then get rid of the proxies. Or if you just simply want to deploy more proxies, it's a couple clicks within our console now to automate the deployment. From a recovery standpoint, we have the ability to do VM level, VMDK, and file levels right out of the box. There's no additional configuration or impact on the customer's environment. We take all that on in the cloud, but it just makes recovering data very simple for our customers. And everything in there is just fast, scalable, and secure, right? It's just turnkey and ready to go. We do proof of concepts with our customers all the time, and we're up and running within 15 minutes to get their first backups running. Our DR in the cloud is a cool feature that we have. So it's a licensable feature if a customer wants to leverage it. We have many customers that start off using our DR in our backup solution, and then some that start using our DR later on. So it's the beauty of, again, SaaS is that you can just, you start using things when you need to use them. But the way that we do DR is we take the backup copy and we can actually convert it off into into the customer's VPC as an EC2 instance. So that's done by deploying what we call the DR proxy in the customer's VPC. Customer does this on their own. It's just an AMI. And then what we do is we take after our backup is completed from the VMware environment, we automate the restore of that VM into the customer's VPC, and we convert it into an EBS volume. We actually snapshot the volume and then just retain that EBS volume. Just becomes a very cost-effective method of delivering disaster recovery, because now you're only storing 5 cents per gigabyte per month for your DR copies in your VPC. You have the ability to create DR runbooks. We have integrated pre-flight checks, so we can ensure that all the requirements are meant for a specific virtual machine to be able to be converted into an EC2, and raise alerts where changes might have to be made. We have the ability to test in production settings, so this allows you to create kind of 2 scenarios for failover, where if you wanted to test it, you could create a test scenario, everything spins up, and it spins up in an isolated environment, and then have your production settings, which could take over in a real world failover example. And then we have failback as well. So we have a mechanism built in that we can take those EC2 instances and actually convert them back down to VMDKs and bring them back down to your vCenter environment. RTO minutes for any size VMs. The technology that we've employed allows us to essentially spin up any number of virtual machines within 30 minutes regardless of the size of the virtual machines or the number of the virtual machines. Then this is the power of cloud. The resources are there within your VPC, and Druva has the ability to leverage them to the maximum potential. And then from a security standpoint, right, Druva is hands off. We don't have the ability to manage your VPC, which is what you want. We're just going to be able to orchestrate all the data movement securely from your backup copy into your VPC, and then you manage the systems once they're there. But in a scenario where you did have an on-premises failure of a virtual machine, the administrator can just simply log within our console, kick off what we call a failover, have those VMs up and running within minutes in the cloud. From an Oracle standpoint, it's something we've been focusing on for a while now, what we've done from an Oracle standpoint is we've really focused on the administrators and delivered a very comfortable and a very common way of doing Oracle backups by leveraging what we call a Druva PBS, Phoenix Backup Storage, which is just a virtual appliance or physical software only. We give the software, customer can deploy it any way they want. But this just serves up an NFS mount, which then leverages Oracle's Recovery Manager solution to do backups down to that local NFS mount. At that point, what Druva does is we look at that PBS almost as an agent. We move that data, we dedupe it, we compress it, and we move the backup copies into the Druva cloud, and then we retain those backup copies according to whatever retention policies the customer needs. So now you've created an air-gap copy of the backups. You also now can leverage RMAN's recovery window for local retention and local recoveries. So again, we give the ability for DBAs to feel comfortable with the backup solution, provide the RTOs and RPOs that they need in a very familiar format, and then the ability for the backup administrators or the storage administrators to have an automated method and secure method to move those backup copies into the Druva cloud for whatever requirements that they have. So again, retention, long-term retention, being able to recover it to different targets and so on. So very simple, very effective solution though, something that our customers have adopted, are adopting very rapidly at this point. And the beauty of the architecture itself is it plays into any environment. So we're seeing a lot of our customers now that are doing lift and shift of Oracle into the public cloud, and the flexibility of our solution allows them to do the exact same thing with our software in a public cloud. So we're seeing this more and more now, where customers do a lift and shift, and if they're using an on-premises backup solution and now they're stuck in how do we back up this workload once we moved it into AWS onto EC2, for example. Lift and shifting the backup solution, an on-premises backup solution, generally doesn't go well. So by just using a software-defined cloud-first model, just plays in really, really well. SQL, we have an agent for SQL, so the customer can install a SQL, our Druva agent onto that SQL server, and then we can back up that data direct to cloud. We support all the full and differential and excuse me, backup methods, or the fully compliant solution for SQL, and then we support standalone and then always-on configurations from a SQL standpoint. But everything else is still built in as far as the data transport and storage standpoint goes. We're doing the dedupe compression, incremental forever, and just moving unique blocks of data to the cloud. And again, something else we're seeing more and more with our customers is that they're doing a lift and shift. They're taking those SQL servers, they're putting them into EC2, and at this point, this is where they're looking at a re-architecture solution. And ours is simply plug and play again. So whether it's a SQL box sitting on premises or a SQL server sitting in the public cloud, it is the exact same experience with us. And everything it still has the same wrapper around it, in the sense that all that data is going to be secured the same way. It's all going to be encrypted. Again, the transport's going to be encrypted. The storage is going to be encrypted. The retention policies, all the data is going to be air gapped from the primary. There's no root access, so it just makes the migration of these workloads a lot easier for our customers as part of their strategy. And then I mentioned the app aware for SQL on VMware, right? So at this point, no agents required. We if a VM does have SQL installed in the guest, you can configure our app aware option for that virtual machine, and we can use the credentials for the VM, and then at that point, the Druva agent can actually, the Druva proxy can actually perform transaction log backups of those SQL, do full backups, incremental or differential backups, and transaction log backups of those databases without having the agent installed. And then from a recovery standpoint, give you all those that point in time recovery flexibility as well. For Druva and for NAS and file servers, what Druva does today is we do a file scanning approach to file data on NAS. So you deploy what we call a NAS proxy. So this could be a Windows or a Linux machine, depending on the protocol that you're using. So if it's NFS or SMB, and then we simply do a remote file scan of the data. We still do global source side dedupe over incremental with all the security and everything involved, and transfer that data across. We've introduced some cool technology built on top of this, the ability to do what we call a smart scan, which is a metadata-based scan. So, if you have a lot of stale data and you don't want us to have to scan it all the time, every time we run a backup, maybe just scan it once a month, you can put on a time-based scanning method that says, don't scan on an incremental scan, don't scan, data that hasn't been modified in 2 years. Right? Only do that once a month on the full scan. So it's just a cool option that we put into the solution just to do more intelligent scanning. Then from a file server standpoint, on Linux and Windows, you can install our physical agent, and we can back up that data as well in the same similar way, global source side dedupe ever incremental. Just allows for a very simple, effective way of protecting unstructured file data. We're doing a lot more as well now with file data. We've introduced what we call a long-term retention option. So if you have data that you have to keep for more than a year, with just a click of a button within our console, if you select what we call long-term retention on that backup policy for that data set, we'll instantly give you a 30% discount on the credit usage. So basically your licensing gets a 30% discount automatically. What it does in the cloud on the back end, it allows us to tier that data down to cold storage faster. And in turn, we'll pass that savings on to you. From a recovery standpoint, the only difference is that anything older than 15 days has a 48-hour SLA for a defreeze. Right? So if that's okay with you and that meets your SLAs, then it's just an easy 30% discount automatic. And again, this is all turnkey, right? You just enable it, we give you the discount, Druva takes care of the rest in the back end. What we've done is we've taken the NAS proxy idea and we've actually extended that to gotten certified and validated within AWS's EFS and FSX file services solution, right? So we fully support these two workloads today. We're seeing more and more customers adopt it for different use cases in the cloud, and they're looking at ways to protect the data within and getting into our platform so they can leverage all the other value adds that we have. And it's simply just deploying a proxy in their VPC to move that data. Great. So just some key points to remember, right? So some, Druva as a SaaS-based, SaaS-first, cloud-first solution, right? The whole goal is to reduce complexity and cost, right? And enable modernization. So, as our typical customers, right, their environments are evolving. They typically have a cloud strategy in place today, and this is where they're looking at their existing data protection solutions or their strategy and saying, okay, how do we streamline more of this? And that's where we come in. So we really focus now on the workloads, right? The idea of saying, okay, let's look at what you have, and here's how Druva can help with these specific workloads, right? And cloud first, right, is really a future-proof model, right? The cloud is the future. It's the way that data is going. It's the way that services, the way that IT is moving towards, right? There's still going to be a split. You're still going to have your on-premises. You're still going to have, but you're also going to have a lot more native cloud services and kind of lift and shift workloads, and then other native cloud workloads that are running in the cloud. What I went through today is just a small subset of what we do, but we do native AWS workloads. We do Microsoft 365, the G Suite, Salesforce, right? Our whole goal is to be where our customers are as far as their source data and where it lives. And today that is in either native services or in public cloud, or still on premises. So. The call to action, I mean, go to our website. We have a TCO tool that you can run through, reach out from a demo standpoint. SCs are always ready to do demonstrations for our customers. And then we do free trials, right? Call them proof of concepts. We call them trials. But this, try our software out, right? We have the ability to get you up and running within a couple of minutes. It's, again, beauty of the cloud, the power of just being able to have the solution there and ready to go. I would say most all of our customers try our stuff, use our stuff, do detailed proof of concepts before they purchase. So definitely recommend it. And that's it.
Great presentation, Jesse. Absolutely. Yeah, we do have some questions for you. While we do that, I'm just going to bring up this poll that says, what additional information would you like about the Druva solution? And I encourage everyone to answer that while we take some quick questions here. First one, Jesse, of course, you get this question before, I'm sure. How do you license the product? What's the model there?
Yeah, great question. So the solutions that I went through, we actually, the way that we license it is based on post-global dedupe storage usage, and that's it. So there's no egress costs, there's no restore costs. So for example, if you back up 50 terabytes with us and it dedupes and compresses down to 30 terabytes, your bill is for that 30 terabytes. You can restore a terabyte every day. You'll never get another bill. So it's a very predictable way of licensing it. And that's one of the things that our customers really like about our solution. So when you think about cloud, the variable costs of cloud are many, right? And we've extracted all that out, and we simply just give you one SKU, and that's how you license it.
Nice. And then what about when it comes to recovery? If there is a disaster, you have to restore. What would be the associated cost with doing restores?
Yeah, no, great question. So along the line of our license, we don't charge for it, right? So again, you could restore as much data as you need for whatever purpose you need. We have customers that, from a regulation standpoint, they have to do restore of X amount of servers every month, right, to prove that the data is recoverable. It's part of their compliance. Before they became a customer of ours, this employed actually recalling tapes, right? So there was a full big cost of that, bring the data on site. When they actually started using the cloud, tried to use the cloud for backup destination, they quickly realized the cost to actually pull the data out of the cloud. When they moved to Druva, that was a big driver for them, is that those costs went away, right? They only now are being charged for what they store in the cloud, not for what they access.
Awesome. And then let's see, what about seeding? If someone has a lot of data they want to put into the cloud, can you do seeding for data?
Yeah, it's a great question as well. So, yeah, we do. We have an integrated, since we are 100% in AWS, we leverage Snowball Edge. So we have the ability, a customer can order a Snowball Edge straight through our console. We could Amazon could ship it to them, and then they can run their backups locally to that Snowball Edge and ship it back. And that is actually no cost. So we have multiple ways of getting the data to the cloud. It's, generally nowadays bandwidth is available, so we'll just do the backups in a method that kind of a mapped out method that takes advantage of the global source side dedupe, seed as much data as possible. But we do have examples where customers wanted to use Snowball Edge and seed it physically.
Very nice. Very nice. Well, I'm afraid that's all the time we have in our live Q&A window here, but there's some more technical questions for you in your queue, Jesse. Thank you for being on the event today.
Sure. Thanks for having me.
For more information, check out druva.com. Also check out the handout that's available there in your audience console. I'll just leave up that poll for everyone to answer while I announce our next Amazon $500 gift card winner. That's going to Paul Willett from Colorado. Congratulations, Paul Willett from Colorado. Thank you to everyone who responded to the poll. It's now time for our next presentation on today's Megacast. I'm excited to introduce Mr. Adam Eckerly, Director for Technical Marketing at Rubrik. Adam, are you there?
I am, David.
Always great
to
have
be back
you, Adam.
on. Yeah, thank you.
Take it away.
All right, appreciate it. So as David mentioned, I'm Director of Technical Marketing at Rubrik today. And by the way, it's good to be back on another Actual Tech Media Megacast. Today, I'm going to talk a little bit about Rubrik's approach to cloud data management. If I can find my next button here. So I'm going to just kind of go over the 10,000-foot view of Rubrik in case there's some folks out there that aren't quite familiar with us. And then I'm going to kind of key in on one piece of our portfolio, and that's backup modernization and automation. Then I am going to tempt the demo gods and try to do some live demoing before we finally wrap up. So as I mentioned, we're going to take a 10,000-foot view of the Rubrik platform and how we've designed it with modernization and automation really at the core. There are several unique things about our platform, and the first is SLA automation, or service level agreement automation. If you've worked with managed service providers or cloud providers or colos, you're familiar with SLA policies. We take that concept and we bake it right into our core platform. We replace the thousands of backup jobs with just a few policies that can be applied across all of your workloads, regardless of if they're running on premises or in the cloud. Another thing to note is that we back up not just the data, but also the metadata. So Rubrik understands the where, the when, and the how of your data. And that lets Rubrik get more out of your data, especially as we talk about things like intelligence and automation, we can make decisions based on that metadata. And it also allows us to do things without actually having to pull out data from the system, right? So we'll get into that a little bit later. Rubrik is designed to recover quickly. Now, a lot of folks in this space do backup really well. They're bringing lots of innovation to the table, but at the same time, backup is only part of the story, right? It's the recovery that can sometimes be one of the more important parts. So, one of the things I want to talk about is our built-in global search, and that makes it incredibly simple to find the data that you need to recover and then put it at your fingertips. Well, with just a couple of clicks, you can instantly recover and mount that data directly. The recovery is instant and it's super intuitive to use. Rubrik was also designed to be API first. With the Rubrik API, you can deliver new and automated services across any topology, which was previously a pretty difficult feat to accomplish. And finally, Rubrik is secure and has been designed to fit large and small organizations' security requirements. But what makes Rubrik unique and most secure is that once backup data is written, it can never be changed. You might hear this referred to as immutability, and lots of people are, it's kind of becoming a buzzword in this, ransomware-laden era that we're living in. But when we say immutability, we mean it in terms of when we write data to the file system, it is permanent. It cannot be changed. So in other words, we don't expose that data to an admin, to a user, to an application. Data cannot be manipulated directly. So that is a big piece of why we even go so far as to say, we're immutable, but we're even immune to ransomware. Because even though there's ransomware out there that can specifically attack backups, they can't touch ours and yours for those Rubrik customers out there. So that's kind of the high-level view. There's some other pieces that you can see on the slide, like extending to cloud. We certainly help customers not only protect on-premises data, but also protect data out in the cloud, but also even we have some technology called Cloud On, where you can take a virtual machine, for instance, and maybe you just need to do some test dev or test a restore, and you don't have capacity, or you don't want to take up capacity in your on-prem data center. So you can actually convert that VM on the fly to an Amazon EC2 instance, for example, or an Azure image, and bring up that virtual machine in one of the public cloud providers. And then there's also some products, I talked a little bit about ransomware, but there's a little bit more to that portfolio, or that part of our portfolio, with Polaris Radar, which is more proactive ransomware detection, and then also our Polaris Sonar product, which is about data governance. I don't have time to get into those pieces of the portfolio today, but definitely encourage you to, check out our website if you want more information on those areas. So let's kind of switch gears and turn to our focus on modernize and automate, which I think this is the good news in terms of having, not a ton of time to talk about everything that I want to talk about, and that this is really the part of our portfolio that is the best place to start and is probably applicable to the largest set of folks in this audience. So one of the reasons that we get a lot of interest in the market is that data protection hasn't really changed that much in recent past and even going pretty far back. It's been a complex architecture that's made up of different hardware and software components, and often requires a lot of personnel to keep it up and running. Right? You've probably heard more than me talk about these aspects of legacy backup solutions. But we modernize all of this by collapsing this complex architecture down through a single software fabric that scales out infinitely to provide data protection both on premises and in the cloud. We hear that customers, it's difficult for them to meet their recovery objectives with their existing legacy solution. And that often requires multiple steps and possibly even multiple teams to fully recover. With Rubrik, you can quickly search across the entire environment and then easily pick the restore point that you want. I talked about the global search in the opening. This is, kind of that Google-like capability where maybe you don't know exactly what the file name is. The users come to you and, perhaps they don't have the exact information you need. Well, that's why the metadata becomes so important. You can, search by different parameters to find the data that you need, and then it's super easy to restore. And we can mount that data directly from the Rubrik cluster, or we can choose where that data can be restored. So whether you're recovering from a corrupt database or a ransomware attack, recovery is really what Rubrik was built for. Legacy backup has also gotten costly. Hardware upgrades, maintenance, and personnel costs to maintain. So modern backup is just less expensive. Rubrik customers recover 70 to 90% of their operational or administrative time when they move off of their legacy system. And then they save 40 to 50% in total hard costs. Now let me go into a little more depth on the Rubrik way of managing data protection and really why it's such a big time saver. With legacy systems, you have to take all of your business objectives and turn them into this technical reality. A backup administrator negotiates with each application owner, perhaps, and maybe even down to the specific virtual machine level or application node that needs protecting. And then we got to schedule all of those backups and in which order. There's blackout windows and exclusions, retention and archive policies. All of these things need to work in concert with each other in order for these backups to fully function. I like to use the analogy of shipping a package. When you ship a package via one of the great services out there, right, you just basically hand over that package and you say, I want that package to be delivered in X number of days. Let's say I need to get it to its destination in 3 days. So you don't have to then coordinate all of the steps that that package needs to take, the trucks, the planes, the locations, the timing. That's not what you expect out of a shipping company or a logistics company. And that's really what, you shouldn't expect that out of your data protection or cloud data management solution, right? You hand the package over and you let the logistics company do all of the hard work, all of the things behind the scenes in order to get that package where it needs to go. Rubrik, we're pretty much doing the same thing. The animation is not playing on the slide, but this is part of my demo anyway, so I'll show you all of this. But essentially, we're taking all of those steps, and the platform is intelligent enough to figure out, if you want to back up that application every hour, keep those hours for a certain number of days, and get into all of your RPOs and your recovery time objectives, we orchestrate all of that stuff for you. So all you really have to do is create a policy and say, here's how often I want to back it up. Here's how long I want to retain it. Do I want to archive it to cloud? Whatever, you put a few of those parameters into an SLA policy, and then we can assign that SLA policy to anything within the infrastructure, whether it's, we can have one SLA policy that protects both VMware virtual machines, Nutanix AHV machines, bare metal servers, SQL servers, Oracle servers, you name it. So you don't have to have these sort of point solutions or point jobs, tactical jobs maybe is a better terminology, to protect all of these different workloads. So another problem is that legacy systems can be slow when it comes to actually recovering data. I keep kind of harping on that recovery is sort of what we're aiming to be really good at. And ultimately, that's why you have backups in the first place, because if the restore is no good, or you're restoring bad data, or the data has been modified by ransomware, the restore is, becomes, just another bad part of the system. And so you don't have to worry about reassembling fulls and incrementals and, keeping track of what's what as far as your data goes. Rubrik takes all of this and abstracts it away. It's just a few clicks to do any kind of restore, and I'll show you that in the demo. And coupling that with our global metadata index lets you look across the entire environment instead of having data silos and making it even more complex to do anything to restore the data that you need quickly. So basically, you can go in, and again, I'll show this in the demo, but you can kind of just pick a date and a time or a point in time and choose to restore. And there's several different options to restore. I see a question in the queue asking about how fast is recovery. So we have an instant recovery option where we actually mount the data directly on the Rubrik cluster. And in the case, let's just use a vSphere example. We go ahead and mount that data, let's say it's a whole virtual machine. We mount that virtual machine on an NFS share right on the Rubrik cluster, and then we automatically map that NFS share to an ESXi host and go ahead and power it on. So you'll see in the demo, because I'm gonna do this exact thing. I'm gonna do a live mount where by the time that I click live mount and go, I'll flip tabs to vSphere, and by the time I flip tabs, like that VM is already up and running. So restores can be very fast. So to kind of close out on the slide so I can keep going, data doesn't actually have to move around within the system. We've been able to map those point in time, what we call snapshots, but just, think of them as just backups directly to hosts. So, if we're using that live mount option, it's super quick to get that virtual machine right up and running instantaneously. And also when we're done with it, or let's say that we want that to become our new production VM, we can storage vMotion that VM right off to our production data store. Or if it was just, we wanted to do some forensics, we can, right in the Rubrik UI, you can just click unmount, and we take care of powering down, destroying the data, and unmounting that temporary NFS data store from the ESXi host. So, and you'll kind of hear this again when I talk about automation, but we want to do all of this work that was maybe manual processes and just automate everything for you. So it's just super simple. If you talk to other Rubrik customers, if you ever do a customer reference, simplicity is probably the number one thing that you'll hear. So kind of flipping over to security, kind of the biggest challenge today is really around ransomware. It's hard to go to the news and not find somebody who's been impacted by ransomware. In fact, just a few weeks ago, my children's school was shut down. The doors to the building were locked. The HVAC was hijacked, so we had to cancel school. And that was a big challenge because we're already only going to school half the time anyway. It impacts everybody. And so it's just kind of the reality we're in. So it's really important to talk about how we're different when it comes to ransomware. I talked about, immutability, but, kind of even taking a step further and saying that we're really immune to ransomware, because once that data has been written, it cannot be changed. We also have end-to-end encryption, strong access controls, coupled with that immutability, so backups are safeguarded against any kind of compromise. And this is an area where many legacy solutions and other backup solutions are vulnerable. One example in the recent past is back in March, the city of Durham was able to avoid paying a ransom because they had Rubrik, and they were able to do a very fast recovery using the Rubrik infrastructure and able to tell the folks with the ransomware to go pound sand. And so they've become a huge customer reference for us because they went through it, we proved that it worked, and they loved it. And then everything Rubrik does is extensible through an API. You hear about APIs a lot. The thing that really makes Rubrik different is that the API is not a bolt-on for us. This was built from day one as an API-first architecture. So when you're in the Rubrik UI and the web interface that you'll see me show here in a minute, you can load up the Chrome developer tools, and you can see all of the API calls being made as you're clicking through the interface, or a number of other tools that will kind of do similar things. So from an automation perspective, everything that you can do through the interface, you can automate and then some. So you can not only build your own tools, you can integrate into existing tools that you have, or just have confidence that if you do look at something down the road, like an Ansible or a service catalog like ServiceNow, you can integrate Rubrik right into there. So another cool story is how Duke University is using our automation capabilities to provide a service catalog and self-service backup and restore capabilities. And we also work with managed service providers, or MSPs, that do similar things. So we've got a website out there called build.rubrik.com where we've done a lot of this hard work for you in terms of providing examples and code and SDKs to do all these things. And the nice thing about Build is that it's community-driven, and you don't have to be a developer to get value, or to really contribute to it or get value out of it. We have folks come in that use the code snippets and they file bug requests, file bugs and pull requests because they're playing, or they'll say, hey, there's a misspelling here, or they'll do feature requests. So they're contributing and they don't write any code at all. And that's what's great. It's a very inclusive community, and we're very proud of that at build.rubrik.com. So now let me see if I can tempt the demo gods and do some quick demoing here. All right, hopefully you can see my screen.
Yeah, looks good, Adam.
Okay, thanks, David. So this is the Rubrik interface. This, just like pretty much everything else, there's a dashboard. Hopefully it looks pretty clean. The thing that we want to do first is we want to, I've talked about the SLA domains. This is where we're playing the logistics company. We're taking potentially those thousands of jobs that are all interrelated and possibly dependent on each other, and we're boiling those down to maybe a handful of SLA domains. So I'm just going to create a dummy one, or create a new one. I'll just pick something I've done before. Even though a lot of customers don't use it in this day and age, we do support CDP, or continuous data protection, kind of like having a DVR for certain applications that require it. I'm going to leave it disabled for now, but it's an option. I'm going to say we're going to back up, some application every hour. We're going to keep those hourlies for 3 days, and then I'm going to do a daily, and we're going to keep that for 30 days, and then maybe a monthly and keep that for 12 months, and then a yearly and keep that for 7 years. Something that's sort of typical, I would say. And then we have a couple of additional options of, we don't believe in backup windows necessarily because, we believe our platform is intelligent enough to do everything that it needs to do. Kind of like when we first started doing vMotions, right? We were afraid, and there were customers that even had to do change management for vMotioning VMs. But then we kind of got to the point where, vMotions can happen all day, every day, and it's no impact. Kind of feel the same way with backups. We've gotten to the point where we can back up in the middle of the day with production, and we can do it so efficiently that there's very little impact, if any. But we had customers that said, you know what, I need this ability to specify a window, so you can certainly do that. We can also specify that, when I create this SLA domain and I attach it to or apply it to some sort of workload, I can set when the first backup will occur. By default, it's going to be first opportunity. So after I create this SLA domain, I'm going to apply it to one of the virtual machines in my environment, and then the system will start backing it up almost immediately. Most customers will do that, but it's an option in case we need to change it. The other thing that's really great is, if you want to do something that you might be thinking, I want to back up to the cloud or I want to archive to the cloud, but it seems really complicated. With Rubrik, it's hard to think that it could be more simple. We can enable archiving. I've got an S3 bucket configured, and then we have this nice little slider here that says, hey, you know what? After a year or so, let me get it right on a year. Then, after a year, then I'm just going to push that data out to the cloud, free up local resources, and we're good to go. We also have instant archiving, which means that, instead of holding that data locally in the Rubrik cluster, we're just going to immediately ship it out to the cloud. So maybe you have some test dev workloads where you know that it's not likely you need to restore. So just go ahead and ship it out to the cloud. We also do some different things with some of the different cloud providers. So if you're using Azure, we have something called smart tiering. So we work with the Azure APIs to automatically, we'll archive out to, the cold tier in Azure, or whatever the default is in your Azure account that you're going to use for archive. And then we can, based on this SLA policy, we could set a number of days or weeks or months, whatever it is, where we'll automatically tier that data down to, say, the archive tier, right? Because the slower and longer term storage it is, the cheaper it's going to be. So we can, we work with all the different cloud providers to do intelligent things like that. Smart tiering is an example that we do exclusively with Azure today. And then, of course, we can do things like replication. If we have other Rubrik clusters, we can specify, at what point we want to replicate that data across to another cluster. We can do it, instantly as soon as we back it up, or we can do it later on down the road. We have what's called a cloud cluster, which is a software-only a Rubrik appliance that we can instantiate out in any of the public cloud providers, and we can use that as a replication target. And then that can be backed by like an S3 bucket, for instance, in Amazon. So that's really it. We hit next, and we've just got a confirmation screen, and I'll just hit create, and boom, now we have an SLA policy that arguably would have taken a lot of time to set up in terms of backup jobs, right? And then we can go into, I'm just going to use vSphere in this instance because it's where I have the most stuff. And you can see over here, I've got various SLA domains applied to different VMs. I'm going to use this ATM test VM, and I'm going to check the box and hit manage protection, and I'm just going to assign my new SLA policy to this VM. And that's really it from a backup perspective. Now, let's say I want to do a restore. This is kind of, again, where I've been harping, like this is the thing that I think is a real differentiator for us. If I want to do a restore, I can come in here, and I just started protecting this VM today. Maybe I should use a different example. I can go down here to this VM. So you can see we kind of have this calendar view where this VM, anywhere you see a green dot, you're going to see snapshots. If I go to something that's more recent, we might see more backups. And then I just click this ellipsis over here, and this is where we get our plethora of options that we have. I talked about cloud on, remember? So if this particular VM, I don't believe exists in the cloud. Otherwise, there'd be a little cloud icon here. But the SLA policy was built such that this VM was archived to the cloud. I could do a launch on cloud, and we would convert that image on the fly to whatever cloud we were replicating to or archiving to, sorry. We can also do instantly recover. This is like something really terrible happened, and we just need to get this VM up and running as fast as possible. So instantly recover will actually go and will overwrite any existing VM that's over there. So you really need to use this with caution, because if you're just trying to stand up a VM to do some testing, or you want to just look to see what's on the VM and compare, don't use instantly recover because we will overwrite the existing VM. So I'm going to use the mount virtual machine. This is what we call our live mount. So if I click live mount, it's going to ask me for an ESXi host. I'm just going to pick one, and we're going to click mount, right? And then I promised that by the time we switched over, we would already see that VM pretty much being powered on. So I believe, yeah, so DC01 here is the VM that I choose to restore. And you can see now it's already powered on. So, 10 seconds maybe. And then we attach a date to it so that, again, we're not overriding the existing VM. The existing VM is actually in this management cluster. You can see here. So we don't have to restore to the same place. We automatically, if you're familiar with vSphere, right, you know how this works, but in case you're not, we have the concept of data stores. We mounted that VM right on the Rubrik cluster, and then we went and used the vSphere API to automatically mount that NFS data store as a temporary data store. And then we have all of the power of VMware right on this temporary data store. If I want to storage vMotion this VM off, I can certainly do that. If there's other things that I want to do, this is a full-blown VM, so I can do those things. And then in this case, it was just for testing purposes. I'm going to go down here to live mounts, and I want to clean it up. So now I can just click unmount. And then by the time we flip back over here to our vSphere, we'll see that this thing is already getting deleted and cleaned up, and this data store is going to go away. And now it's like nothing ever happened. So we don't leave artifacts or anything like that out there to be cleaned up. And as you can see, it's pretty quick and also pretty easy from a recovery standpoint. So just due to time, I'm going to just wrap up. Let me stop my screen share here. So just a couple things. There's the handout over on the left-hand side of the screen, but just a couple more links. We've got the data protection, intelligent data protection white paper that talks about Cerebro, which is that part of Rubrik that's kind of like that logistics company. That's the brains that's figuring out all the things it needs to do to meet those SLA policies. And then we've also got the definitive guide to Rubrik Cloud Data Management. That's also a really good resource to get started. And with that, I will wrap and just thank everybody for your time today. I really appreciate it. And over to you, David.
Great presentation, Adam. Let's do some questions now. And while we do that, I'll just bring up this poll that says, what additional information would you like about Rubrik? And we encourage everyone to respond to that. Adam, I put a number of questions there for you in the queue. If you want to, answer any of those, feel free to let me know or just interrupt me. First question I'm going to ask you here that I see is, what makes Rubrik different from other data protection solutions with so many different options? What really makes it unique?
Yeah, I think it's our focus on the recovery and also our API first architecture. Those are the two big pieces. I would also say that, the immutability piece, while, like I said, there's definitely vendors out there that that claim that as well. But I think we do it best in terms of, when we say immutable, it really is immutable. Like that data cannot be changed. And then, just the power of the APIs and that you can integrate Rubrik into all the existing tools that you already have. We have customers that build tools around Rubrik, and just love that automation piece of it. So those are the things that I would say are our main differentiators.
Got it. Okay. And then, so can Rubrik help to recover data in the cloud? Just to clarify, using public cloud like AWS as a DR target?
Yeah, absolutely. That's we do that in a couple different ways. I talked about cloud archival. We really call that cloud out. So basically, we're just shipping that data out to one of the cloud providers, and then our cloud on is where we can actually, convert those applications on the fly to one of the public cloud provider, native instances. We can also recover from the cloud archive as well. So, let's say you're trying to do a more complex recovery, and you don't want to try to convert a bunch of data on the fly, like using cloud on. You can have that cloud data out there and just do a restore directly from there. That's probably the most efficient thing to do, recover directly from the cloud archive. So there's a few different options, but the most succinct answer is yes, absolutely, we can help you recover from the cloud. Awesome. Let's see. Question here about, you talked about just backup in DR. What other solutions does Rubrik offer? Yeah, so I mentioned kind of on that 10,000-foot view, we've got a few different areas of our portfolio. The Rubrik Cloud Data Management is certainly the core, but above and beyond that, we've got our Polaris platform, which is a SaaS-based application. Within Polaris, we offer various cloud-native protections, things like OneDrive, for example, and other Microsoft 365 pieces. And then also we have Polaris Radar, which is our proactive ransomware protection. So, think the core platform that if you were a customer and all you were doing is buying the core Rubrik CDM product, you get, ransomware immutability, for example, like, you can recover from ransomware, no problem. But if you want to be proactive about it and you want to understand maybe the blast radius of a ransomware attack, our Polaris Radar product will help sort of take that ransomware protection to the next level. And then we have the data governance piece, which is Polaris Sonar. So if you want to do things like HIPAA compliance or, scan your backup data for personally identifiable information or PII, or you want to do, make sure you're complying with GDPR, Polaris Sonar is something that you'll want to look at to do that. So those are the highlights of our portfolio today. Got it. Okay. And then, so if someone wants to get started with Rubrik, I know you all have a ton of resources. What do you recommend? Yeah, I think, so we've actually just gone through and revamped a lot of our website. We're continuing to do that, but Rubrik.com is the best place to start. We also have a great presence on YouTube if you want to look at some whiteboard videos and things like that. And then, as I mentioned earlier, if you're interested in the automation side of things, definitely look at build.rubrik.com. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much for the live demo. Great presentation, Adam. Great to have you on. Hey, thanks a lot, David. For more information on Rubrik, check out the Handouts tab as well. There is a solution brief there, and like Adam said, build.rubrik.com, rubrik.com as well are excellent resources. Thank you to everyone who responded to the poll. I'll leave it up there while I announce our next prize winners to give you some extra time. Our next Amazon $500 gift card is going to Matthew Hedchick. Sorry if I mispronounce it, from Tennessee. Congratulations, Matthew H. from Tennessee. And then our next Mac Mini grand prize is going to Jason Roberts, also from Tennessee. Congratulations to both of you. Still another grand prize and another gift card to give away after this. So make sure you stay tuned. Actually, 2 more grand prizes and 2 more gift cards.
All right. Well, thank you to everyone who responded to that poll. I do appreciate it. It's time to introduce now our next presenter on today's Megacast. I'm excited to welcome Corinne Bissett, Technologist in Product Strategy at Veeam. Corinne, are you there?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Thanks for being on. Take it away.
Just to kick it off today, our presentation is about Microsoft Teams backup, what you should be doing about that, how you should be backing it up, and a little bit around why you should be backing up that data in the first place. This is a new feature that we've added into Veeam Backup for Microsoft Office version 5. It actually came out about a week ago today. It includes fully functional, purpose-built backup of the Teams software, as well as being able to restore without a lot of headache back to those original locations. It gives you a sense of control over your data and the protection of your Teams environment. There's a lot of I don't want to say necessarily misconceptions, but a division of who has control over what part of your data. Whenever it comes to Microsoft's shared responsibility model, you are responsible for the data itself. Microsoft will take care of the redundancy of the hardware underneath. But if you do have, say, a rogue credential account that accesses that data with any type of administrator level permissions, it is possible to remove that data from the environment, and Microsoft, unfortunately, is not responsible for that side of the equation. So doing a purpose-built backup of your Teams software can help prevent something that may be a disastrous event that you can't recover from to something just being a bad day when faced with something like ransomware. This allows for a lot faster recovery as well. Native protection through Microsoft does allow you to use in-hold or in-place hold types of data, but this in-place hold is generally for the recovery of data for export for legal holdings. So if you need to restore back to the original location, there are manual ways around that to get that back to those locations, but they will not be in the same format, nor will they have the same permissions that they had originally. We allow for granular control to restore across different or across your entire organization, so you don't have to just query one account at a time. You can actually query and do searches across all of your data, which helps with advanced data recovery. We'll be taking a look at that in the demo we have a little bit later. To understand how Veeam works with Microsoft Teams, it helps to kind of understand what Microsoft Teams is. It's not a self-contained application. It's actually an abstraction layer that brings data together from a lot of Microsoft backend offerings, including Exchange, SharePoint, and OneDrive for Business. Now, Veeam backs up Exchange, SharePoint, and OneDrive, and previously we were able to recover those source data points. But with the introduction of a new API from Microsoft, which allows us to tap into the backend Teams metadata, we can now link those data sources back to the original locations for granular settings recovery, membership relationships, as well as the team structure itself. We can granularly recover channels and files and tabs because we have that configuration data to get that back to the original location. We also allow the ability to recover just permissions. So if you may be going through doing a change request and it does not have the intended effect that the user wanted, you're able to go back and just granularly recover the permissions back to where they were originally, and then being able to take steps from there without needing to remember every step to that point in backtracking, which can save you a ton of time. That takes us into 40 different ways at this point in Veeam Backup for Microsoft Office 365 that you're able to restore. The restore for the explorers don't just restore your data in a way or in a raw data format, but it restores your data in a way that makes sense to the business type application. The great example on this is PST for Exchange. We're also able to export as an MSG file, meaning if you do want to be able to restore those offline and export that data, it's in a data format that makes sense to your application. Of course, when we're looking at SharePoint Online, we're looking at documents and libraries, and teams and channels when it comes to Microsoft Teams. Taking a look at the infrastructure, we're very flexible in our deployment type. You can run an entire hybrid infrastructure from one console. You do not need to do multiple installs if you have an on-premises install and a cloud install. We cover everything from Microsoft Exchange to SharePoint, OneDrive, and now Microsoft Teams data. We do allow the backup of on-premises Exchange and SharePoint as well. We're able to send to any cloud storage, or we're able to send to object storage for anything that is S3 compatible, as well as some of the main competitors such as Amazon S3, Microsoft Azure Blob, and IBM Cloud. If you prefer to keep your data on premises, we're able to back that up to local storage or a local S3 compatible storage. We also do not lock you into sticking with any of these decisions that you make on initial configuration. You're able to move your data based on what makes sense to your business. And of course, as important as it is to back up that data, it is just as important to have flexible recovery types. With each application this software backs up, we have a dedicated Explorer tailored to the data type that we're restoring the application to. So whenever you're looking at an Exchange or store, you're able to see everything in the form of mailboxes. If you're looking at the SharePoint Explorer, we're able to see everything lined up as in sites data. We allow you to restore back to the original location. You can also choose new locations. And one of my favorite features is being able to email a file directly from these consoles back to an end user, making help desk scenarios super simplistic without needing the extra step of exporting, importing, and then emailing back to satisfy a ticket request. We have self-service restores via our service providers as well, which allows for a hands-off approach if you prefer backup as a service for your organization. Now, again, for my favorite part, we're going to go ahead and take a look at a demo. Let me get my lab up. Perfect. This is Veeam Backup for Microsoft Office 365. Adding in your organization is fairly straightforward. All you need to do is hit the Add Organization and choose whether or not you're running a hybrid, an Office 365 only environment, or an on-premises install. And with the addition in version 5, we can now back up with Microsoft Teams. Once you've selected your organization and added it in, the next thing that you're able to configure is your repository. You can split up your repositories in many different ways that make sense to your business. If you're wanting to send off to object storage, we're able to configure something like an AWS S3 bucket. And what this does is it uses a local cache location to the Veeam Backup for Microsoft Office 365 server in order to make restores even faster. You no longer have to go out to the object storage to necessarily read and recover data until it's time to do the actual recovery process. We have the option to set up, say, if you need to separate finance from your help desk, as well as an HR email location and bucket. In some cases, to help with seamless billing, to know which department is taking up the most space, we're able to make multiple repositories from a single location. Configuring a job allows for a dynamic scope, whether or not you want to back up your entire organization and add it into the list here, and separate out whether or not you want to back up just the mailbox, maybe just OneDrive, sites, and of course the addition of Teams. Our exclude list is just as dynamic. You can set up your entire organization and then just granularly choose maybe you don't want to back up certain service desk emails accounts. In this latest version, we've also offered the ability to schedule backups based on a time within an hour, meaning if you do have multiple SLA jobs, you can configure this so that you don't have too many jobs overlapping on the server whenever those SLAs happen to meet that same window, saving on resources, especially in cloud deployments. Taking a look at the new Explorer from here, we'll find it right here at the bottom of the list, and we'll take a look at the latest backup and restore state. While that's loading, we're going to come over here and maybe maliciously or unmaliciously delete this file so we can demonstrate how it's going to come back to the original location, not only to that original location, but with the same modified date. From the console here, we're going to go through and take a look at all of the channels. You can take a look at, say, the different tabs within that channel as well, post and files. We're going to go ahead and do this file or search for this file instead of having to go through and figure out exactly which channel that was in. So we're going to go through and see files, because I know it was a file. I kind of remember the name of that file, but I'm not sure if that's exactly the name of the file. So we can be as granular as saying it just contains. And this could apply to saying if you know the extension or you're looking for a group and type of files, that it'll be able to go through and find that extension for you. And we have the file here. So we have the option to restore the file back to the original location, as well as we saw saving and exporting that file. You will need a Teams administrator account in order to be able to restore back to those original locations. After it's authenticated you are who you say you are, you can go through and restore either just changed items if you selected multiple items, or restoring just the latest version. Restoring just the latest version can be very helpful if you have a long chain of versions on a file, but you do not need to restore the entire history of that file in order to get the data back to the user, which can save time on being able to restore. So we can see it tells us within this list the file has successfully been restored. We'll come back over here and do a refresh. And as we can see, the modified date and who it was last modified by is exactly as it was before without any extra work. Going forward, if you want to read a little bit more about Microsoft Teams and some about why you should be backing up Microsoft Teams, I recommend going through and reading this conversational piece. It will not only help you have a conversation or learn how to have that conversation, but how to address different departments to make it make sense. And of course, you can try it for free for 30 days, fully unlocked and unlimited users. At this time, I'll take any questions that we have sitting here.
Absolutely, yeah. Great presentation. Love the live demo. Thank you so much, Corinne. We do have some questions for you, and while we do that, I'll just bring up this poll. The poll for everyone out there I want to call your attention to. What additional information would you like about the Veeam solution? So don't forget, we're doing a best question prize announcement today after the event. So, get those questions in early. I know you have some questions on how exactly this works. So going to the queue, first question I see is, are all backup vendors using the new Microsoft API for Teams?
The new Microsoft API for Teams doesn't seem to be out there at every backup vendor yet. It is fairly new from Microsoft, and as soon as it was put in, we did hop directly onto that.
Nice. Nice. Very cool. And then what about they're asking, what if I have a hybrid on-prem Exchange and an Office 365 environment?
If you're using a hybrid deployment and you'll be able to deploy directly from the same console. Several vendors will be able to back up either an on-premises or a cloud environment, but it does take an extra install to be able to accomplish that.
Okay. Okay, good to know. And then what about, they're asking, they say, I use litigation hold for backups. Why should I use Veeam?
So the question is kind of a two-part answer. First is that litigation hold is meant for e-discovery process, which doesn't restore your data back to any original location. It is meant for electronic e-discovery in legal proceedings. A backup would allow you to have a secondary copy of your data and the ability to copy your data back to your original location or getting your data back to your users. And we have one of the most granular restore types out there on the market to allow for that.
Nice. For those who aren't familiar with what Veeam does, there's a question here, and they're asking, what else does Veeam back up?
Veeam Backup for Office 365 backs up several of Microsoft Software as a Service applications, which include Exchange, Teams, SharePoint, and OneDrive. We also span into infrastructure as a service backups with virtual machines currently for AWS and for Azure. And we work with on-premises environments backing up virtual machines and physical machines.
Nice. Nice. And then a comment here from David. He says, Veeam is hands down my favorite service. I cannot imagine my work environment without it. We always get a lot of great feedback, especially from current Veeam customers on these events, so I appreciate that. It looks like we've covered all the questions we have time for in our live Q&A, but Corinne, great demonstration, and I've put some more technical questions there for you in the queue if you have time to review those. Thank you for being on.
Thank you for having me.
For more information on Veeam Backup for Office 365, check out the URL that's available there in the Handouts tab. That'll take you to veeam.com, and you can try out the solution for yourself. And with that, I'll leave up the poll question while I announce our next set of prize winners. We have an Amazon $500 gift card going to Linda White from Tennessee, and another Mac Mini going to Brandon Vickers from Texas. Congratulations to all the prize winners. Still one more Mac Mini and one more gift card to give out on today's event. And with that, I'm excited to introduce our next presenter on today's Data Protection and Disaster Recovery Megacast. Welcome, Mr. David Huskisson, Rapid Restore Solutions Manager at Pure Storage. David, take it away.
Morning. I'm David Huskisson from Pure Storage, and for the next 20 minutes or so, I'm going to give you a quick overview on how Pure is modernizing data protection. Before we get into the technology, let me just talk about some of the trends that we're seeing, and hopefully you'll recognize some of them. So I think this is a trend that everyone, I hope, on the session will understand and are seeing personally, is just a massive growth of data. I mean, data's always been growing. I've never met a customer who said to me, I've got less data this year than I did last year. But you can see there's some absolutely massive growth. And obviously in the current environment, current situation, that data, that sort of transformation, that digital transformation is occurring, much with a greater velocity, and is obviously generating more data. Probably a more interesting statistic that you probably didn't know is you can see that the enterprise organizations are really starting to embrace Flash, not only obviously as a primary storage technology, but as a secondary storage technology. So, 3 years ago, organizations were saying, I'm never going to deploy Flash for for data protection or secondary workloads such as analytics and so on, well, you can see that trend is certainly changing very rapidly, and I think it's pretty obvious why you want the performance and the scalability that Flash gives you, not only for those mission critical apps, but also for those secondary apps, of which data protection is one of them. And again, this one I hope really resonates with you. There was a study done a couple of years ago, and you can see that organizations are really trying to improve what I would say recovery, right? I think we've solved the backup problem, but I think the problem we've not solved is really the recovery problem. And I think part of the reason why organizations are trying to improve their recovery, their SLAs, their recovery points and recovery times, one of the compelling reasons is this situation. So again, I'm sure you all know, I'm sure all of your organizations spend a lot of time thinking about, cyber attacks. We know from the conversations we've had with our customers that this is in the top, always in the top 3 of the leadership's agenda. How do I protect against, how do I recover from some kind of cyber attack? Because if you can't recover, if you can't get your business up and running quickly enough, you don't have recovery to go to, then your business could end. And in fact, we've seen organizations lose a lot of revenue. We've seen organizations, smaller ones, luckily disappear because they weren't able to recover in time. So I'm sure that this is top of mind for everyone in the audience today. Okay, so what's Pure's position in this? Because you probably look at us, and if you don't know us, you think you're a storage company, or how are you helping data protection? At the center point of our sort of modernization of data protection is obviously our all-flash offerings, and more specifically our FlashBlade offering. And FlashBlade, is a scalable all-flash blade based architecture which scales up to 10 petabytes with a single namespace. And one of the beauties, I would say, of FlashBlade compared to everything else, especially in the data protection space, is our performance doesn't degrade as we get better, because we're adding that storage, networking and compute at a blade level. Our performance actually increases. So, a fully populated FlashBlade will deliver that 270 terabytes an hour read performance. And because it's all flash, there's what we call no deduplication penalty. If you look at deduplication systems, they tend to slow down as they fill up because there's a lot of physical movement. That's not a problem we have with Flash. And also, I guess our sort of third big differentiator, and hopefully you can see from the slide here, is FlashBlade is not a one-trick device. It's not a dedicated backup device. A lot of our customers, in fact, 80% of our customers that use it for data protection also use it for another workload, such as analytics or semiconductor design or some other large unstructured workload. So FlashBlade is really what we call the unified fast file and object choice with industry protocols, SMB, NFS, and S3. So, and because of those industry standard protocols, we pretty much work with every data protection vendor that's out there, and you can see some of the sort of key ones on the slide here. We use different protocols for different vendors, but we also work very well with native scripting tools such as RMAN and SQL Server. So there's very little interoperability problem with FlashBlade and the data protection vendors. And I'd certainly encourage you, if you want to read more, go to purestorage.com and look at some of the white papers we've written around interoperability and some of these data protection vendors. Over the last year, we've started talking about how do we help organizations with that ransomware problem or that cyber attack problem. And really, if you sort of break it down from a data protection perspective, because typically, if an attacker gets through your sort of defense in depth, strategy, then you're faced with some kind of remediation exercise. And data protection is the place you go to for that remediation exercise, that recovery exercise. So we believe there's really two things that you need in, if the worst comes to the worst and you're having to recover. The first thing is you need valid, unmolested copies of data. They've got to be clean. We know that ransomware especially sort of hangs around for a long time. So you need, usable data, copies of your backups, because the attackers are also going after your backup images because they know that's where, that's the place you go to, so you don't have to pay the ransom. So you need those valid copies. But I think what often gets forgotten is you actually need a fast recovery platform to bring that data back. And just compare and contrast quickly between a day-to-day recovery, which may be half a dozen virtual machines, it may be a single Oracle or SQL database. Compare that to a ransomware style recovery. That's likely to be pretty much, could be all of your mission critical data. Some customers take over 30 days to recover. Go and read the Maersk shipping example. They luckily had clean backup images, but weren't back in service for 30 days because they just couldn't recover quickly enough. And so we have a technology that's in our FlashBlade called Safe Mode Snapshots. I'm not going to go into lots of detail in a public forum about that, but these are snapshots that FlashBlade will take in the background, and they are different from normal snapshots, and they're very secure. And there's certain very tight access criteria that you need to be able to manage these. So not even the administrator can delete or manipulate safe mode snapshots. Everything has to be done in conjunction with Pure support. And again, the beauty of these safe mode snapshots is that they are part of the core FlashBlade offering. So you don't have to pay any extra. You go through a process with our Pure support people to get them set up. And again, much like FlashBlade's support, we work with all the major data protection vendors. So again, I urge you to read, go to puresupport.com, go and click on the ransomware product area, and you'll get a lot more detail about how these work together. So that's our safe modes snapshot support. So I now just want to spend sort of the last few moments here just talking about a recent announcement, because we've had a lot of success in the data protection space. We've done a lot of work with the vendors, and we really decided that there's so much more we could do here. Customers and partners were asking for something perhaps a little bit more tightly integrated. So I'm just going to spend a few moments talking about Pure Flash Recover. So this is in partnership with Cohesity and their data protection solution. And really what Flash Recover is, it's really the industry's first jointly architected all flash data protection offering. And it really is, the next generation, we believe, of data protection products. So there's sort of three kind of use cases as we've started bringing this offering to market. There's really three use cases that we're aiming to solve for customers. And the first one really is around restore. Okay, so this ability to be able to very quickly identify what you need to recover, because that can be quite complicated. Identify what you need to recover, and then be able to bring that back at a very high speed. And traditional data protection architectures can be a little bit limited. certainly as that data growth, as I spoke about earlier, continues to grow, your data protection strategy has to accommodate that. And so really, we believe Cohesity have really solved the problem of scale out. Okay, it's very difficult to scale any system, and FlashBlade has got the right architecture to scale out, and Cohesity have been able to deliver a data protection software that also scales out. So restore, a high performance restore, the ransomware protection that I spoke about. So that really leads from the high performance restore, that ability to bring back thousands of VMs, over a petabyte of data in a 24-hour period from a data protection system. And then, we know that, leveraging your own data internally to be able to drive some other critical applications in your organization is vital. And so Flash Recover makes it very easy to provision backup data for DevOps. So being able to take copies of virtual machines and Oracle and SQL databases and be able to display those, spin those up really quickly for developers in the organization. So those are the three problems we're really solving. So let's just dig a little deeper into Flash Recover. So the first thing is it's a disaggregated scale out architecture. So if you envisage a sort of, legacy is not quite the right word, but if you envisage the standard data protection server, you've probably got a set of data movers and a set of storage. And Cohesity is slightly different in that you have your Cohesity, if you like, your data protection servers all right into a FlashBlade. And what that allows you to do is it allows you to scale both the compute and the storage as required. So for instance, I need a little bit more horsepower because I want to improve my recovery times. I can just add some more compute nodes. I need some more storage. I can just add some more storage to FlashBlade. So really, by disaggregating the storage and the compute in a data protection solution, you've got elasticity in both dimensions, which is great. And the beauty of that is you still, however you disaggregate, you retain a single point of management. And that's really critical in a data protection universe because you don't want to have silos of management. And I think B, what often gets lost is this silo of deduplication. So if you've got multiple silos of storage, you're generally only deduplicating within that silo of storage. Whereas in a disaggregated storage and compute solution like Flash Recover, you're able to keep your pool of deduplication in a single unit. So no matter how big you get, no matter how many compute nodes you have, you're still getting deduplication right across that environment. And I think that's a really key, key benefit of Flash Recover. Talked about performance. So, you can see some numbers here. We're working very hard to bring to bring a performance study to market. So keep tuned for that. But I think one of the other key pieces here is just the way that Flash Recover has revolutionized the restoration process. So Flash Recover makes it very easy to actually find what you're trying to recover. And that sounds fairly simple, but again, I think it's a problem that data protection vendors have grappled with for a long time, trying to actually find the stuff you need to recover. So that has certainly been completely simplified with Flash Recover. I'd also say presenting that recovered data to the requester has also been simplified with Flash Recover. So it's very easy with Flash Recover to present, your virtual machines are up and running and allow you to go and do some operations on them, to test, to have a look at them, do some test dev work, etc. So really, we've really gone for that sort of, one of the virtues of Flash Recover, apart from its architecture, is that really simplified, model. And again, I think this is one of the themes of the last sort of 10 years. In our sort of personal IT universe, we expect simplicity. We want apps. We want to, press a couple of buttons and make something happen. And that's really what's sort of generated, ultimately a new set of data protection applications, is that highly simplified operational capability, from all the way from being able to manage it, so through auto discovery of systems you want to protect, through auto discovery of the storage you want to use, the ability to do non-disruptive upgrades. So, I don't have to take things down. I don't have to have an outage. Outages and backup windows don't sit well together. So being able to have non-disruptive upgrades. And then another advantage, I think, of Flash Recover is its ability, just because of how it's been developed. It was born into a universe where cloud was cloud was a dominant technology. And again, if you look at some of the older data protection vendors, they've had to retrofit cloud to their offerings, and that's a pretty difficult thing to do. So, Flash Recover arrived when cloud is well known and is being used. So I think having that native cloud integration is a real advantage for Flash Recover. And then finally, the other piece of this is the customer experience. And those of you who have already deployed some Pure storage infrastructure, hopefully will know how easy and how important and how easy the customer experience is with us. So obviously innovation is key. And I think if you look at the recent Gartner reports on Pure and Cohesity, both very innovative companies, I think one of the reasons we decided to go to market with Flash Recover was to simplify the buying experience. So you can come to Pure and buy all the components that you need, the compute nodes and the storage and the software. So we've made that pretty easy. And again, you get access to the support organization, a world-class support organization with one of the highest NPS scores in the industry, Pure Storage's support experience. So you'll get all the features and benefits and the way that Pure operates its support model with Pure Flash Recover. So really, to conclude, just to kind of summarize, sorry, this has been a very quick kind of overview, but to conclude, I think Flash Recover is a offering that gives you, can meet your most demanding recovery SLAs, very critical, especially in the sort of cybercrime universe we find ourselves in. I think we try, Pure Flash Recover keeps your TCO, your backup TCO low. I think it does that through how we've centralized and keep a single management point, how we keep deduplication in a single place rather than having it spread across multiple servers. It does really feel like a modern backup experience from the deployment through the management through the upgrading. It's a pretty simple experience. It's what you'd expect in a modern data application. And then we feel longer term it allows you to protect your investments. You can use Flash Recover, you can use FlashBlade as part of Flash Recover, not only for your data protection, but again, like the earlier slide I showed, you can still go do other things with it. So you can still run Splunk and Elasticsearch, and Confluent on your FlashBlade. So again, we're bringing that sort of consolidation message into data protection with Flash Recover. So I'll pause there and see if we've got any questions.
Great presentation, David. Really appreciate that. We do have some questions here for you from the audience. First one in the queue I see is, how do I get access to safe mode for ransomware, and how much will it cost me?
Yeah, thank you for the question. So, let's take the last question first. So safe mode actually won't cost you anything. It's part of the core FlashBlade software stack. So there's no license charge for safe mode. Where you may incur some additional cost could be in the additional space that you need to host the safe mode snapshots, because obviously you're retaining copies of your backup data for longer, and that's going to have space implications. And how do you get it? The best way to get this is to get with your channel partner, get with your Pure sales team, who can facilitate getting it set up and sized and set up.
Excellent. All right. Yeah, sounds like a super easy feature to add on there. So next question in the queue is, what advantages do snapshots for backup deliver?
Oh, my favorite. So I mean, snapshots and backup have been around actually for a long time. And really, snapshots sort of deliver, I'd say, sort of two things straight off the bat, and one less obvious thing. I think the first thing that snapshots for backup deliver is, that very lightweight, very quick storage level copy of your application. So, it can happen in milliseconds. Your application will get frozen, but most users won't even know because it happens so quickly. And the flip side of that is when it comes to recovery, it's a very, very quick recovery path. So you get that sort of instant rollback. So you can get your applications up and running, very quickly. And probably the third sort of fringe benefit is, those snapshots are great to recover from for your primary applications, but you can take that snapshot of your primary application, recover it somewhere else, and give it to a developer, an analytics person. So it's a very good technology to be able to deliver copies of data to go and do some ancillary operations on.
Absolutely. Yeah. Tons of different benefits there. Thank you. Let's see. Next question. How does FlashBlade deliver the rapid restore performance exactly? How does that work?
Okay, so very briefly, I mean, I think there's certainly a couple of dimensions or some physics that FlashBlade, that helps FlashBlade deliver that. So clearly, it's an all-flash. It's an all-flash device, which means, especially if you're doing deduplicated backups, where you've got blocks of data spread right throughout the disk system, in a spinning disk environment, you've got a block, you've got to seek for a block, and then you read it, and there's lots of physical movement. We don't have that in Flash, so you don't pay what we call the deduplication tax. And then the other piece is, if you look at FlashBlade's architecture, which is blade, there's a blade with some storage on, then there's networking and compute. As you keep adding blades, as that FlashBlade expands, its performance actually gets quicker. So it's really a combination of its architecture and the fact that it's an all-flash offering.
Awesome. Sounds awesome. Incredible performance. Let's see, we're running out of time here in our live Q&A session, but final question I wanted to ask you before we go, how should people get started?
So, we're very proud of the kind of solutions interoperability work that we've done at Pure Storage. So, I think to get started, I know there's some material available for this, but certainly go to purestorage.com, go and look at our rapid restore solutions, look at the technical documentation. You can download where we've done that interoperability work with all the different backup partners, and then go and look at our ransomware safe mode solutions. There's some great technical information and actually some live demos. You can actually see it in operation. Very
cool. All right. Well, excellent presentation again, David. Thank you so much for being on.
My pleasure. Thank you.
All right, I've just brought up the poll question for everyone out there that says, what additional information would you like about the Pure Storage Rapid Restore solution that you just learned about? And I encourage you to respond to that. Thank you for all the great questions that have come in. I'm afraid we're running out of time here on the event to get to those. I will be forwarding those to David immediately after the event, and hopefully he can get back to you. Great questions, great submissions to our best question prizes that we're doing for each session today. So thank you for those. I'll leave the poll question up while we announce our final gift card winners. Oh, actually, yep, let's do that. Final gift card winner is going to Darren Barr from Colorado. Congratulations to Darren Barr from Colorado. Hopefully everyone has had a chance here to respond to the poll. We do appreciate that. I'm going to go ahead and I just want to talk about a couple of things before I announce our grand prize, final grand prize, and that is we hope that you will join us for the Actual Tech Media Discovery Days event coming up next week, starting on Tuesday and continuing for deep dive sessions into Wednesday and Thursday. On the initial event on Tuesday, we will be giving away an iPhone 12 every 15 minutes. It's hard to believe that, but it's true. Hope that you'll join us. After this event, you'll be automatically redirected to our events landing page where you can register for our brand new event type, the Discovery Days event on achieving IT and business success in 2021. Hope to see you there next week. And finally, I want to remind everyone once again before I announce the grand prize, and that is we would appreciate your help in selecting new vendors, new solutions for 2021 events. We're doing a survey on that. You can click directly there on the screen to launch the survey on the URL. You can also go to the Handouts tab and click on the link to the survey. And we are doing 2 more Amazon $100 gift card prize drawings based on anyone who fills out the survey. You'll be entered into that drawing. So it's only a 9-question survey. Hope to get your responses to that. And so I'll just leave that survey up, give you some time to click on the link and announce our final grand prize winner for a Mac Mini. That's going to Aaron Cooper from Minnesota. Congratulations, Aaron Cooper from Minnesota. I will post all the prize winners right now in the questions box before I wrap up the event. Again, thank you for all the excellent questions. All right, prize winners posted. Thank you, everyone out there, for your support, all the great comments. Jeffrey, Ned, Chris, Richard, Melissa, Kathy, Rick, Adam, tons of great comments, feedback. I can't name everyone's name, but we do appreciate your support throughout 2020 on our Megacast event series. Hope to see you next week on the Discovery Days event and hope to get your feedback on what you'd like to see in 2021 with our new vendors poll. Click the link there on the screen. Thank you, everyone, for joining us on today's event. Have a great day. Bye-bye.